Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. I want to welcome everyone tonight. In attendance, we have Janet, Alan, Chow, Ginny, Lynn, Shari, Nancy, Dick, Milton, and Andy for the board, and Susan on the CA staff. We'll remind everyone, Greg just walked in, so we have a full
Compliment.
Yep, full board tonight. And we'll remind everyone that we are actually recording the meeting and streaming it live on the internet, so you will be on camera when you come up to the podium. And read our 5 civility principles. Speak kindly, don't speak ill. Accept and give constructive criticism. Apologize earnestly. Respect others' opinions. Respect other people's time. Need to announce if we have had any closed meetings, and I do have some forms here. The Audit Committee had a closed meeting on June 26th, 2017. In attendance were members Nancy McCord, Janet Evans, Greg Schwinn, James Young, Ed Bergman. The vote to close was 4-0-0. Ed came late. It was closed under section 1 and 4, discussion of matters pertaining to employees and personnel, in consultation with staff, personnel, consultants, attorneys, board members, or other persons in connection with pending or potential litigation or the legal matters. The meeting was closed at 8:10 and opened at 9:13. The purpose was to review internal audit reports in consultation with staff personnel on legal matters. There was a meeting of the Architectural Resource Committee on Monday, July 10th. In attendance, members Sherry Faneroff, Deb Bach, Eva Marie Lambright, Tom Mungo, Gracie Bradford. The vote to close was 5-0-0. It was closed under Section 4, consultation with staff, personnel, consultants, attorneys, and other persons in connection with pending or potential litigation. The meeting was closed at 1:06, and it was opened at 2:15 p.m., and the purpose was to discuss ongoing and new covenant cases. There was a meeting. So there's a meeting of the Audit Committee on June 26th also. At CA headquarters in attendance were Nancy McCord, Janet Evans, Greg Schwinn, James Young. Vote to close was 4-0-0. Same reasons, 1 and 4. Discussion of matters pertaining to employees and personnel in consultation with staff, personnel, consultants, attorneys, board members, or other persons in connection with pending and potential litigation or other legal matters. It was closed at 8:10 and opened at 9:13. Purpose was review of internal audit reports and other communication with the internal auditor. That's all the announcements I have for closed meetings. So move on to approval of the agenda. So I would remind the board I did send out an email. We did have a request from staff to add to the end of the agenda after item number 10, the State Highway Administration initiative for discussion and vote. That would require a 2/3 vote to do that and to suspend the rules.
I'll make a motion that we add the item to the agenda.
Second.
And suspend the rules to allow a vote.
Yeah.
Yes.
Second.
So Greg moved that and Ginny seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, how about the approval of the agenda? We modified it.
I make a motion.
All those in favor of Approve the agenda. Hearing no other objections, it's unanimous. Wow. Disclosure of conflicts of interest. None have been disclosed to me. So move on to resident speak out. I want to thank everyone who came here tonight. And I do have the resident speak out. Dick, our vice chair, will be the timekeeper. The way we work is 3 minutes for an individual and up to 5 minutes for an organization. And I'll call you in order of...
Could you repeat that? I didn't hear you.
Oh, yes. We do 3 minutes for an individual and 5 minutes for an organization. I will call them in order of the sign up. And the first one is Alan Feinstein. Alan? Alan, if you just give us your name and address.
My name is Alan Feinstein. I prefer not to give my address. I live in
Long Reach.
Long Reach,
Okay.
because we're on closed circuit TV.
Okay. Alan?
I have
welcome.
2 concerns that I'd like to address with you. Several times I've been up in front of Tomato Palace up at the lakefront, where Clyde's is. And I've encountered people smoking there. And I've even moved to other benches, but it seems like the smoke, the more the people are smoking, the more concentration it is. So I looked at the sign in front of Tomato Palace where the walkway is. It comes in there. And it says open space management. There's a phone number there. I contacted a Sean, and I explained to him that it would be nice on your open space management, you have your rules and regulations on there, but there's nothing about smoking. That you need to be 15 feet away, I think the Howard County law is, and the state of Maryland, from the front of the door, exiting Tomato Palace, Clyde's. I find there's cigarette butts up there, and truthfully, I don't really care for cigarette smoke, and I'm sure there are a lot of people that do feel the same way that I do. I'm here in front of you because it would be nice if you all could put a sign up talking about the state and county regulation of 15 feet away from the businesses. I think, and I have one other thing. Does anybody have any questions for me? Last time I was here, you all wanted to. So that's why I'm here, to see if you can get signs put up. The gentleman, again, Sean Hardbar, B-A-U-C-H, said he would get back to me, but I guess he hadn't. I said, well, I'm coming up here to the board meeting. I'm going to discuss it with you all and see if you can do something for the people of Columbia who really don't want to sit there and inhale other people's smoke. And I was going to go over and talk to these people that are 4 people, but I decided no, there should be a sign there. These people are French, you know. I didn't want to impede on their holiday, but it would be nice if we could have a sign explaining the policy of Howard County and Maryland.
Anything else, Alan?
Yes, one other thing. I'm a swimmer. I go to Columbia Gym. They just did a renovation. I noticed on the renovation in the pool area that we have brown spotting on the beams above where I swim. I'm concerned that that is mold, not rust. There is an easy way to test that. You all have a long aluminum rod that's 15 or 18 feet long on your wall, I guess in case somebody's drowning, to give them a lifeline or something. All you have to do is take bleach, put it on a rag, rub it against the top there, and if it goes away, you know it's mold. If it doesn't, you know it's rust. And that's in a very inexpensive way. I find when I'm exposed to mold, it causes severe arthritic attacks in me. I'm done. Any
Thank you, Alan.
questions?
Any questions? Thank you, Alan. Alan?
Did you reach out to anybody about the Columbia Gym situation?
I did. I spoke to a gentleman who's in charge of building maintenance, and he said, well, we started painting. I said, well, why wasn't the beams painted at the time? And he said, well, they had a problem with the people coming in and putting up sound barriers, and then the scaffolding was up, and then somehow it wasn't coordinated all correctly, but they plan to do it next year. But my concern is next year is a long time away, and if it's mold, it should be dealt with.
Thank you.
They also painted the columns in the pool area and the walls. May I thank you for your time?
Thank you, Alan. Next up, Nick? Yep.
Actually, I have a question for Dennis regarding the smoking issue. That I just want to get some facts here. That area in front of the Tomato Palace, does that belong to CA?
We own a lot of it, not all of it. The building's not ours, for sure.
Okay,
But
but
a couple feet off the building is open space.
is open space. And do we have any CA regulations about smoking regarding the open space?
They apply to the building, not the open space per
Not
se.
the-
But I'll be happy to talk. I know the manager of Clyde's, and I'm sure I can get him to work with us.
Because I know the Clyde's has that pavilion that they use for serving, and they do smoke up there. I was just wondering if there was.
So we have some policies about there's no smoking at the tot lots, but we don't have a general open space smoking policy.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Next
I'd
up,
like to reply to
No,
that.
that's not.
we'll follow up on it now.
Okay, great.
Next up, we have Tim Latimer. And then following Tim will be Pat Hersey. Tim, welcome. Just give us your name and village. And
Great. Thank you. And I've got a full-length copy. I'm just going to give an abbreviated version here, but a full-length version is coming around for you, and I'll be emailing it to you all as well. My name is Tim Latimer. I'm a resident of Long Reach Village. When the Columbia Association decided to buy solar power from Nixon's farm a few years ago, one community leader put it this way, I quote, "This solar project is a great step for our community and for the world we leave to our children. From a sustainability perspective, it's absolutely the right thing to do," unquote. That leader was CA President and CEO Milton Matthews. Likewise, CA's energy manager said that these efforts send, quote, "a message to others in the region and here in our community that investing in clean energy strategies is a sound business decision and an important choice in reducing the risks associated with climate change," end quote. I suspect that the vast majority of Columbia residents completely agree, and I applaud CA's commitment to reducing Columbia's energy consumption and greenhouse gas emissions. While climate change is a global issue that requires international cooperation, its impacts are local. But so too are the solutions, because cities are on the front lines of climate change. The Maryland Climate Change Commission reports that Maryland's efforts to reduce or combat climate change will bring the state an economic benefit of $2.5 to $3.5 billion by 2020, as well as create and maintain some 26,000 to 33,000 jobs. It is clearly in our self-interest to tackle the climate challenge and to seize the tremendous economic opportunities it presents. That is why a growing number of communities around the United States are raising their voices and stepping up their action on climate. Since June 5th, more than 2,200 American cities, counties, states, companies, and universities have signed the We Are Still In Declaration to demonstrate America's enduring commitment to deliver on its contribution to the historic Paris Agreement. These signatories hail from both red and blue localities around the country. Given Colombia's outstanding track record on clean energy and sustainable development, our absence from this declaration is a glaring omission. At least 11 other Maryland cities and 3 Maryland counties have already signed on. I urge the Columbia Association to sign on as soon as possible. Doing so is completely in line with the vision already articulated in CA's strategic plan. Take it from one who was a part of the U.S. team that negotiated the Paris Agreement. What U.S. cities say and do on climate really matters, both substantively and diplomatically. Now is the time to stand and be counted. Let your legacy as stewards of Columbia be a proud one in helping to reassure the global community that ordinary Americans are fully committed to strong climate action and that we here in Columbia are all in on the Paris Agreement. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Any questions? Janet.
Specifically, what you would like Columbia, is a statement what you're looking for, or is there an additional effort that you'd like to see from?
On the website, we are still in. There are instructions giving a way for cities, counties, companies, universities to be able to sign on and add their name formally. It has to be done by somebody who's authorized to do so on behalf of the community. I personally think a statement that would go with that would be very useful, but I think it basically is adding Columbia to the growing list of communities that are signing on to that statement.
Wait, Alan and then Ginny.
Well, 2 questions. Am I correct that our county executive is on record not wanting to do this for the county?
I have not spoken with him about doing this. I've spoken with him in the past about climate in general, and he had told me offline that he believed climate change is real. But we've not discussed this. We are going to be taking this up, though, to the county level as well. But we wanted to begin here with Columbia, where we live and where we're proud to live.
So let me restate Janet's question because I think it's an important one. Is this like the least we could do, and there's more that you'd like CA to do on behalf of Columbia around this, or is this the only thing we can do around this?
Well, Columbia is obviously it's a city, it's a community. We are not a sovereign nation. We are not going to be signing to the Paris Agreement as a sovereign nation, but it's an expression of the community's support for the goals articulated, which Columbia is already doing and doing quite well. And it's really, I think, an opportunity to take due credit for all the great work that Columbia has done in recent years.
Thank you.
Ginny?
Yeah. When we go on the web, is this the letter that we'd be agreeing to?
Yes.
Or the statement?
That's the statement. That's,
So we have it now, we
Yeah.
know what it is?
Yes,
Okay.
and you'll see also, and there's a website noted at the bottom of that list, and in the version that I will email to you, you can also click through to find it. But you can see the long list of companies and cities and counties that have already signed on
Right,
around the
but
country.
my point was, this is what we'd be agreeing to if we signed it.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Chow?
So, is this just a statement, or is there legal binding to sign this?
It's not legally binding.
Just a statement.
This is a statement of policy. It's a statement of the will of the community that we want to carry forward with clean energy because we see that it's in our interest to do so, and that we support the goals articulated in the historic Paris Agreement.
Thank you, Tim.
Okay.
Next up, we have Pat Hersey. Pat, welcome.
Thank you. I'm Pat Hersey from Oakland Mills, and if I could just take a minute, if people who are in favor of them supporting this, would they all stand right now? Because not everyone's going to be able to speak. So just to show you that. Thank you. So I am not a public speaker, but I'm very passionate about this issue. Climate change is more than the fact that the CO2 level is over 400 parts per million, which is a 40% increase just from the pre-industrial age. Climate change is more than the fact that the U.S. generates 17% of the greenhouse gases, where only 5% of the population lives. It is more than the fact that the last 3 years have been the hottest years on record. It's more than the fact that we may have already passed a tipping point in western Antarctica. So we know the facts and the numbers. And I applaud the CA for everything they have done to minimize our carbon footprint based on all those facts. And it's critical that we continue to make changes. And as an environmentalist, I thank you. But here is another aspect of climate change. It's a moral issue. We must respond to a standard beyond money, regulations, facts, and numbers. We must be a moral leader for climate change. That is why I am asking you to sign the pledge, the We Are Still In pledge, to give a gentle nudge, some positive peer pressure, an old-fashioned handshake to other organizations, cities, states, and towns that are not supporting the environment. I want the Columbia to be the leader, the moral leader. Columbia has been on the forefront of moral issues for the past 50 years, and climate change should be no different. By signing the pledge, the Columbia Association will show that they are a leader by standing with the facts and with the moral issues of climate change. I believe Pope Francis summed it up well when he said, we must regain the conviction that we need one another, that we have a shared responsibility for others and the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Any questions? Jenny?
Yes,
A
Jenny.
quick one. Pat, if the board decides to sign this, people will only see this if they go on the website and see that the Columbia Association or board has taken a position, right? Are you suggesting, maybe this was Alan's question before, in addition to that, we send it to the county council, the county executive, the delegation?
We would appreciate any support.
They know, and the congressional delegation as well?
Exactly. That would be wonderful. That would
Okay.
be wonderful.
Maybe the president?
Wouldn't that be wonderful? Well, we're fighting for it. We're fighting for it. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
We'll support you in any way.
Thanks, Pat.
And truly, I appreciate everything you have done as a CA member.
Next
Yes.
up, we have,
Oh, Alan?
Alan?
Alan, sorry.
Do you know if the Howard County Chamber of Commerce has taken a stand on this yet?
That's a good question.
I do not know. Does anyone know?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Alicia, Neifeld. I'm not the greatest with names.
No, I know. It's believe that should have been Smith.
Welcome, Alicia.
Oh,
Just give us your name and village for your the record.
yeah, Alisa Neifeld, and I'm in Oakland Mills. And I've been a resident of Columbia going on 32 years. And I remember back in, 73 when my parents, we lived in Langley Park, and my parents were going to move. And I said to them, I remember reading about Columbia and how it sounded so great and so innovative and everything. And the Rouse, philosophy, of course, back in the 70s, it's like, wow, I got to be up in here. I want to move to this city, to this, Columbia. My father said, who's going to move there? There's nothing but cows, And I said, well, the cows are gone. But that is kind of a sad thing to see, because I moved here. I couldn't wait till I could be able to move here, because I love the town and the the walking paths and the green, although the green's getting a little chopped away by commercialism. But one of the things that I do like, and I would like to see more promotion of it. I mean, why not tout that Columbia Association is doing all these great things to help with the energy and conservation? Why not have a banner out there on the board or something? Why not promote it? Why not scream it from the rooftop and do more? I mean, the solar energy is on all the buildings. I mean, why not become, as my friend says, the California, the East Coast, and make it, promote Columbia's being green. I'd like to see more of that. I want to see, taking the pledge and starting there, but growing on that. It's, to me, I think it's another innovation of Columbia. It's a continuation of it. And I think it could bring, well, we have a lot of people coming here, but why not, while they're here, and bringing them here to participate in it and say, hey, guys, that's a great place to live, and especially for people that are, you know, conservationists, and why not? You know, it's another great place for people to want to move to. So I'd like to see Columbia Association and Columbia and its whole Howard County do as much as they can, and really put a big banner up there, go Green Columbia. You know, that's my comment.
Thank you, Lisa. Any questions, Chow?
So, one off the topic, what's the T-shirt you're wearing? Invisible code?
Well,
That's another
you might have
story.
heard of it. Well, Indivisible is a nonpartisan group that was started sort of after the election, and we've got about 170. Well, just in our little in our chapter in Howard County, but there's multiple groups and thousands of chains. But by this, in our group, we've gotten subgroups, and our group is the environmental subgroup. And we've, you know, put together a town hall. We had Ben Jealous and the state attorney, you know, Brian Frost was there. And, so we've done, you know, some things, and we'd like to grow and promote it and get more people involved. Is what put the word out and just get people involved in it. That's what it is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Next up, we have Janet Rude. Welcome, Janet.
Thank you. Good evening.
Give
It's
us your-
actually Janet Rock, and I'm a resident of the Village of Oakland Mills. And I'm also here to encourage CA to support the pledge. I'm also a longtime Columbia resident. Very proud to have been a Columbia resident, and for a number of years raised my children here and plan to age in place here. And I'm already aging in place. And of course, Columbia is the Money Magazine's best small town, and why not do everything we possibly can to continue to be the best small town? We've got the People Tree. We're a community that supports people, that the growth of people, the promotion of people, and so at this point, I think if we take the pledge, we're actually putting ourselves on the map to not just be what we've been, but we're setting the stage for the future. We're doing a lot of building and encouraging of people coming here, coming back to the community to raise their families. And I think from an older person's point of view, which is what I'm speaking, but I also have millennial children who are very passionate about this topic. And I think if we could get more young people involved in our community, like my colleague said, on an issue that is so paramount to all human beings, start right here in our community. That is, I think, the James Rouse's mission continuing in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Janet. Any questions? Next up, we have Ginger Scott. Welcome, Ginger. It's been a while since.
Good evening. I'm Ginger Scott, and I've lived at 5070 Whetstone Road in Wild Lake for almost 47 years. First, I want to thank Nancy McCoy for her faithfulness in sending Columbia residents regular reports of your monthly board meetings. This information gives CA's assessment payers a more timely account of your deliberations than is available in the minutes. It was by reading Nancy's notes on your last meeting that I became aware of a recommendation by the Green and Golf Committee that you all consider the, quote, distribution/sale of alcoholic beverages at Fairley Hills Golf Club from the beverage cart, end quote. There was neither amplification nor justification for this request. Do you all understand what it's all about? Before you consider this out-of-the-blue suggestion, I hope you will ask CA staff to provide you the history of the Liquor Board's permitting process for Fairway Hills beginning in 1994 or 95 to the present. This should include a summary of previous boards' decision-making on the topic. I don't see how you can make an informed decision without this background. I also hope that due diligence will prompt you to ask the staff to estimate the financial impact of this move. Will it be positive, negative, or neutral? And finally, I hope you'll ask 2 more questions about this idea. Did anyone or the committee or staff consult with CA's medical director before bringing it to you? If so, did he endorse it? I was going to say thank you and good night, but I didn't realize that the climate people were going to be out in such full force, and I would like to add my support to their recommendation.
Thank you, Ginger. Any questions? Greg.
Ginger, thanks for coming in. It's always good to see you. And I hope you don't take this question the wrong way. I'm just, we have to compete here in Columbia with the programs and the services and the facilities and things we offer have to compete.
Oh, yes, yes.
Are you aware of any other golf courses in Howard County that does not serve alcohol?
Oh, I think that the Columbia Association, that Fairway Hills serves alcohol. I haven't explored this issue in probably about 6 or 7 years, but the last time that I had researched it, it was my understanding that a golfer could buy at the clubhouse 2 beers, or what for that matter, 2 beers or glasses of wine to take with him on the golf cart for each 9 holes, which would be a total of 4 beers on an 18-hole course.
You just don't want the cart running around servicing the...
Well, that is what the Wallingford community has requested over many, many, many years about.
And so my question is, are you aware of any other golf course in the county that doesn't have, I'm not going to refer to her, but doesn't have the person, driving the cart around selling beer?
No, I'm not, but I'm also not aware of any other golf course in the county which had its own consultants recommending that they not build in Running Brook neighborhood because of the close proximity of the existing homes. CA had its own consultant, and that was Algie Poy's recommendation, and CA staff ignored it, and the CA board ignored it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alan.
So
Yes.
I just want to be real clear. The list of questions you gave us were wonderful questions that we ought to be thinking about as stewards of CA and so on. What I wasn't, Greg made an assumption, and I don't want to make that assumption. Do you have a position on this question?
On how competitive CA?
The question of whether we should have this cart running around.
No, I don't think you should have
Okay.
carts
I just
tootling
want
around.
to be clear about that.
Alan, it's been their position for years. There's no assumption.
Many of these homes are very, very,
That's
very
heard.
close, and you all didn't have to go against the recommendation of your own consultant.
Thank you.
Chow.
Thanks for coming. So what's the reason we need to consult with the medical directors? So what's the medical reasons associated with this providing alcohol?
Well, I have read in any number of these little health newsletters we get that 2 drinks a day for a man, 1 for a woman, would be the maximum that individuals should consume. And if CA is going to be providing as many as 4 drinks on the course for a man or a woman, that would be 4 times as many as the recommendation for a woman. It would be twice as many as the recommendation for a man, and that's before you get to the 19th hole.
So your point, two beers should be fine, but 4 beers were not allowed. Is that your position?
No, I'm just wondering, since you all have a medical director, whether whether CA asked for his opinion about this and before requesting that you all approve this.
Dick?
Have there been any incidents or any problems arising from drunkenness on the golf course?
Oh, at one point, Ron Goldman had proposed a compromise, and he had suggested that maybe they could just have the golf carts tootling around the, it would be holes 1 through 12, and then pick up again at 16. Avoid the Running Brook hole, since that's where the problems have been. And I remember that Phil Kirsch suggested that, they would sell it, they'd buy it on hole 12, they would consume it on holes 13 and 14, and they would pee on holes 14 and 15. So that is a problem. And it's not only behind my house, it has been other places.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point there, CA did acknowledge that there was a problem with people urinating on the hole 13, 14, and 15 holes. And they put up little signs like this that said, had a little policeman showing it like this, stop, the neighbors are watching. The neighbors were not watching. The neighbors did not choose to watch these people urinating.
So the answer.
That is a problem.
So the answer is yes. There have been incidents.
Yes, there have been problems.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jenner. Jenny?
Maybe the sign should read, "The neighbors are taking pictures."
And posting them.
Alan?
Is this not a problem in Hobbit's Glen, or?
I don't know. I'm not so privileged, Alan.
Understood.
One thing, though, I have noticed at Hobbit's Glen that the homes seem to be much farther from the golf course than the homes in Running Brook are from the Fairway Hills Golf Course. Are you familiar with both courses?
Thank you.
Thanks, Ginger.
Okay, thank you.
Next up, we have Larry
Thank you all
Liebersman.
very much. I didn't know this topic was on, more or less on the agenda, but I'm so pleased that it was, and I was happy to join you all and stand with that. Thank you for support.
Larry?
What is the name?
Liebersman. Welcome, Larry.
Yeah, we're good to be here today. Good evening, everybody. My name is Larry Liebesman. I live in Vantage Point Road Town Center. Been a Columbia resident for over 40 years. I've also been a practicing environmental attorney for over 40 years, including working at the Department of Justice. And I know Jenny from her days in the General Assembly. I'm here to strongly urge the Columbia Association to sign on to this declaration. I want to give you my perspective. I've been very active in Citizens Climate Lobby, which is a grassroots organization trying to put a price on carbon. As part of that, we've been lobbying on Capitol Hill with members of Congress at the state level. There's a climate change commission that I've been attending and participating in their various meetings. We are at a critical stage in this country. Climate change is critical not only in this country but internationally. With getting out of the Paris Agreement, we could slide downhill. CA has done a great job. I commend you on the tremendous job you've done in terms of sustainability. But it's really critical to go on record right now. There are over 2,000 cities, businesses, nonprofits, NGOs that have signed on to this declaration. I know the county says good things about dealing with climate change and the goals, but going on record, there's no substitute for going on record. So by going on record, you simply state your position that you're in support of this declaration, which basically restates the goals of the Paris Agreement and the commitment to stick with those goals. You'll be signing on to over 2,000 other organizations, cities, municipalities. So from my perspective, having practicing environmental law, working with CCL, seeing these issues on a national level, there's no organization too small to go on record, to make a statement, to join, I believe, 11 cities, a number of counties in the state of Maryland that have gone on record to support this resolution and this declaration. So that's why I don't want to repeat the eloquent comments that Tim and others have presented here. But we're not in a simple time. There's a time to go on record. I'm very emotional about this because we have to take a stand. And I've seen it practicing in environmental law. So that's basically my statement, and I'd be happy to take any questions, comments, thoughts that anybody has on.
Thanks, Larry. Sherry and then Alan.
Yeah, hi. Thank you very much for coming, and I really appreciate all the people who have shown up today about this. I was thinking that at King's Contrivance we have an environmental committee that works in our community. Is that something that you would be interested in serving on if CA, for example, had an environmental committee just like we have, and we've looked at reports from about a dozen different committees?
Yeah, I've got to look at my schedule. I'm a busy guy. I'm not retired yet, as much as my wife would like me to retire. I do like to sleep at night and visit my kids, but time permitting, I certainly would consider getting involved.
Okay, because that enthusiasm, I think, is so infectious, and the more people that can tap other people, there are lots more things I think that CA could be doing if we had more volunteers.
Yeah, and I think playing a role with the county. Why is not the county executive or the county council gone on record, along with Montgomery County, just passed a resolution through the county council in support of this? There is no reason why this county should not go on record in support of this resolution to sign on. Absolutely. I think it's a travesty that we have not done that. It's a travesty of the governor. There are 11 states, including 2 states with Republican governors, that have signed on to this resolution as well, and we have not signed on. The using CA's voice and its role in the community and its history and what Columbia stands for is very powerful in trying to convince others to also get involved and sign on to this declaration.
Alan.
Yes.
Besides the inexorable tick, tick, tick of the environmental climate change clock, are there any set goals or targets that those who are organizing this We Are Still In campaign are? We have a process where things get on the agenda, but it could be months out. Is there not, the climate's not going to, we're not going to go up to 3.5 degrees in 2 months, 3 months. But are there other reasons besides passion why we should do it soon?
Any sort of objectives that I'm aware of? The whole idea of this U.S. Climate Alliance is to expand the universe, the net of groups and organizations, in an effort to convince the leaders in Washington and at the state level that we made a huge mistake in getting out of the Paris Agreement, to rethink the idea, to put pressure at the Washington level. And so there's a bipartisan coalition of members of Congress, 50 members, 25 in each party, that have signed on to what is called the Noah's Ark Coalition to support climate change and to support addressing greenhouse gas problems. So it's really important to look at the universe and the role that we play, maybe small, but participating and monitoring what's going on and continuing to play a role in this process. That's really my thought.
Thank you. Any other questions?
So you said there are around 2,000 organizations signed this already?
Over
from the United States?
2,200, as I understand, over 2,200, and Tim probably can add to that.
How much
Go ahead.
what the percentage of that cover the whole United States?
I looked earlier today at the number of cities and counties, and it's pretty broad. I noticed states from the West Coast, California, Southeast. It's a pretty broad national representation of cities, universities, business organizations, major Fortune 500 companies have signed on as well, NGOs. So it's growing, it's expanding every day, and so it's certainly not just the regional or not just the coastal organization where people are concerned about sea level rise. It's of a national scope.
Thank you, Larry.
Anyone?
Oh, great.
I've been on this board for a while. Were you aware that this year we're about to, starting the fall, embark on the process that blooms into a 2-year budget? We have never, I don't think, heard from the community a single request for a budget item related to sustainability, related to the environment. If you all really care, and this is really near and dear to your heart, and you're willing to do all of this for a signature on a page, maybe, a lot of very smart people here, you probably know a lot of smart people as well, you can put your heads together and make a recommendation or proposal, because right now is the time to do it. Okay? Where's Mike Cornell? Yeah.
He's coming up next.
Former board member. Okay? He can tell you exactly how to do it. He himself has fought for some things in the past when he was on the board. So I just put that out there. Signature on page is one thing, but it could be more.
Thanks, Larry. And Michael is next. Welcome, Michael.
Thanks, Greg.
Put you on the spot, man.
Yeah, I've passed out my prepared statement. I'm not going to read it to you. You guys can read it on your own. I just want to say that most of you in the room know who I am. I was on the board for 8 years, served as chair, vice chair, worked on numerous budgets, put a lot of time and energy into sustainability issues. A lot of the green initiatives. Our Greening of Columbia is the program I think was initially referred to, started some 10, 12 years ago. So CA has a history of doing the right thing. We've heard some talk tonight about values, and that was one of the catchphrases that used to fly around the boardroom. Want to live our values. And I think in this community and in many communities around the country and indeed around the world, there are lots of individuals that are doing what they can. They recycle, they have solar panels. I'm happy to report, thanks to John McCoy and the CA program, we have one of the first rain gardens in River Hill. We do what we can. What we do know, what the science tells us, is that individual action alone can't stop what's going on. The CO2 buildup in the atmosphere is approaching levels that have not been experienced on this planet in millions of years. We are approaching a point where the last time CO2 accumulated to the levels that we are rapidly approaching, there was a mass extinction. We're heading for another one. We're already starting to see the early effects. We see sea level rise. We see the coral reefs, the Great Barrier Reef around Australia is effectively dead. The acidification of our oceans is killing off marine life. The pollinators here in Maryland and throughout the country and parts of Europe are struggling mightily. I know several beekeepers in the area who they don't want to talk about what's happening to their apiaries because it makes them profoundly sad. And I know CA has done a lot. CA could do more, and I think if we put a group together, we can make some great suggestions as to what else CA could get involved with. But we need government action at all levels, at the state level, at the national level. And with the current administration withdrawing from the first global commitment to fight climate change, we need pressure, we need support, we need participation at all levels. So I'm going to put it out on the table. What I would love to see you guys do is sign on to the We Are Still In declaration in support of the Paris Accords. Encourage our county representatives on the county council and County Executive Kittleman to also sign on, and to encourage our delegation in Annapolis to at least get the House and the Senate to sign on if they can't get the governor to sign. Let's do what we can and stop worrying about what we can't do or who we can't get to sign on to something and throw our hands up and say, oh, well, we did the best we could. Mm-hmm. If we get everybody but the guy sitting in the White House or the guy sitting in our State House to sign on, that sends an incredibly powerful message. CA has always been a leader in so many different aspects of social responsibility, environmental accountability. Let's take another step and let's do it together. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Alan?
I've heard it said, I haven't heard it said directly, but I've heard it said by others that they have approached CA, and I'm not sure who in CA they're talking about, and we're told it's too political. How would you respond to that, as having been part of the politics of CA?
I have heard that.
How would you respond to that?
How would I respond to that? This isn't a matter of policy. It's a matter of humanity. You know, we work very hard in this community as stewards of the environment to leave something for our children and grandchildren, but if the rest of the world isn't joining us, we're going to be fighting a losing battle.
Or if we're not joining the rest of the world. Thank
Penny.
you, Michael.
Michael, I want to thank you for your leadership years ago in getting a lot of these things going. Also, I love Greg's idea, and you said you might have some ideas. So maybe if you could get together with just some of the people here and follow up on Greg's suggestion, give us some ideas of what CA could do.
This is why I don't go to meetings. No, I'd be more than happy to do that.
Just one quick idea. I think we're doing this. When you're using a treadmill or a bike and stuff, we are using that energy to produce electricity. No? Yes? Maybe?
We have some equipment
some.
in
We have
some
some.
gyms that does that, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably very expensive to do that, but
We could probably spend 20 minutes just listing out
Oh, we don't
everything
wanna do that
CA has done in terms of sustainability and energy efficiency.
Not now.
Yeah, there's more we can do.
All right.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
Michael.
much.
All right, thank you.
Okay, and Joel Horowitz. Joel. Welcome, Joel.
Hello, Joel Horowitz, 5681 Harper Storm Road, Columbia. Didn't figure it out. This was my doing. Since I've talked to you twice about this before. I was going to back clean up and answer some of your questions. Political. Because I don't have an invisible shirt, I wore the one from Greenland because that's the problem if the ice cap melt on the glaciers in Greenland. My political hat when I've been campaigning, my earth hat when I'm not. Once you look at the four walls in here, and I sent you all an email earlier, referred to. So, got the clock ticking on two sides. We heard about the time, one for you to do something, and the climate change. Over here, we have the number one small city, so do what number one small city should do. If you look at the email, what referred to picture I took from the athletic club, which has the mission and the vision, just like that. And then it says that the electricity use of this facility is 100% offset with green power from solar and wind sources, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, supporting local renewable energy development, and reducing the threat of climate change. You've already tied that wall to the athletic club to climate change. It is in your strategic plan, as we talked about before, but how many people in the public do you think read your strategic plan? So yes, I'd like you to put out a press release, put it in the newspaper, and put it on the website, which I emailed you all last time, all the website pages. You've got 4 or 5 of them that already talk about what you're doing and what the community's doing. So add another page, add half a page, I don't care, put it there somewhere.
Thanks, Joel.
How much time do I have?
You're out. Yeah, sorry. Who am I watching? But you know our email address. So.
I want to answer some. I sent a gentleman a letter to Alan to answer his question, and green electric vehicle, Dennis, has been replaced.
Anyone else? Thanks, Joel. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate everyone coming out to speak out. And I'll put this down. Move on. Approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of June 22nd?
So moved.
Ginny moved and Dick seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Could I have the list of names?
Unanimous. Okay. Chairman's remarks. Be real quick. Remind everyone, the athletic club closes July 30th, this coming Sunday. Opens again August 28th. August 7th, we have a meeting with the Ann Arbor Trust Board of Directors.
What's that date again?
August 7th, and there'll be an announcement coming, but just remind everyone, August 7th.
Is that a public meeting?
Yeah, it's a joint. Yeah, it's here. 7 o'clock. August 14th, the ice rink reopens. August 21st, we have the BOC meeting. And then, since we have no meetings in September, just remind everyone that September 9th, we have the 50th birthday color plenum air paint out down at the lake, part of the birthday celebration. And then the CA board work session is September 14th. So make sure you have that on your calendar. I did get a chance to attend the Merriweather 50th birthday party. It was very nice. Great activity. Hard to believe it's 50 years. I also got to attend the development regulations meeting the county had set up for the village boards on Monday and the general public on Tuesday. I thought the discussions were very good at each meeting. Some interesting ideas, interesting thoughts came out of that. And then lastly, just remind everyone, I have begun scheduling the meetings to meet with each village during September, October, and November. And I'll let you know what the schedule is when we get everything finalized. All right, move on then to Milton's report. So everybody had a chance to look at it. I want to congratulate Milton on becoming the chair of the Sustainability Task Force for the community college. I'm sure he's thrilled with more work. And also, I would like to note that Sherry Faneroff, our general counsel, got an award, a national award, and Megan Hart at Aquatics Department was our first lifeguard to receive the Golden Guard designation. So congratulations to all those. Any questions for Milton? A lot of good activities going on. Janet.
So ironically, I had no idea that the climate folks were coming tonight. But in reading the President's report, one of the things I made a note to myself was I was curious what CA was doing to promote their sustainability. I think, someone had mentioned about our carbon footprint, which, we couldn't directly answer that. But I do think that CA makes so many, does so many things to promote environmental sustainability and energy efficiency. And, I've seen some publicity for that, but I think CA could really get that message out there. So it's just sort of coincidental that they ended up coming tonight. But, I'd like to see CA do more to promote itself when it comes to that kind of thing.
Second that motion.
Third.
All right.
Milton, you represent us on the Better Business Bureau.
No.
No?
The chamber.
Chamber?
Excuse me, the chamber, I am sorry. Can you tell us what the relationship is between the local Chamber of Commerce and the National Chamber of Commerce?
I'm not the Howard County Chamber. There's not a membership that I'm aware of. The president and CEO may be a member of the National Chamber, but I'm not aware of the chamber having a membership in that. They have a membership in the Maryland Chamber, but I'm not aware of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce.
Are we sending money to the National Chamber or to the Maryland Chamber? No. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Up first.
I read there was a reference in your report, Milton, to the athletic club and the HVAC work that's going on over there. Is that what's going on the side of the athletic club on Beaver Hill Road? Looks like there's some. It didn't look like HVAC work. My question is, what is the project that's going on the side of the athletic club?
It's HVAC work. The units sit on grade.
Ah, okay. Gotcha.
And that's the only work that's supposed to be going on at this phase at the athletic club, right, Dennis?
Correct. This is very minor work inside, but it's mostly mechanical systems.
Okay. Thanks.
Milton, you mentioned the Chamber of Commerce, but there are a few other groups that you sit on. Could you give us a one or two sentence sort of update on what we should know about what those groups are doing?
I try to provide it in my board, but basically, when it comes, the Howard County Economic Development Authority right now, one of their focus, and I emphasize, one of their focuses is working with the Gateway area as is an initiative by the county government to make that, reposition that area for an innovation district. That's one of their, they just approved their most recent strategic plan, and their focus is it's more or less they're going to look at the Route 1 corridor, the Route 40 corridor, the Gateway, looking at small businesses, trying to be less focused on the Fortune 500 companies in Howard County. Most of Howard County, whether in the chamber or the EDA, most of the business in Howard County have 10 or fewer employees. So small business focus is what's there for the chamber, and to a great extent the Economic Development Authority. Downtown Columbia Partnership, we have hired a new new executive director. There's not been a public announcement yet, but I can say the person is local. What else? Downtown Columbia Arts and Culture Commission. The most recent event was the pre-party for the 50th birthday at Merriweather.
Great, thank you.
Busy.
Appreciate that.
You're very busy.
I get around.
HCC. HCC. Howard Community College.
Can you
now.
just have
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah. A quick question. The press release that went out about CA and the Howard County Economic Development Office looking at the village centers. So I've got an email from one of our board members and said, well, how does this impact us? Will we be involved in any kind of way? Could you sort of preview what might be happening next so that I can give my board members some idea?
I can do it, but I'd rather for Scott to do it.
Oh, okay.
Scott, why don't you come up here?
So yeah, I think when we announced it, it was kind of a bare bones here. So I'm not sure it really got out. So the press release certainly helped circulate that message. So the question is sort of what happens next. So we've already been working with EDA for a little while now, a few months. We've spoken with the Village Center owners just to give them a heads up that we're starting this program. There's a lot of opportunities to collaborate. So we've had some discussions with those. We're still working with getting a few more people at the table at each respective company, but the dialogue has been productive. And so the next step is we're currently working on production materials, so sort of informational brochures that we can hand out to different merchants and tenants there to explain the programs or how it's going to work, how we're going to help connect them with some of the resources that EDA has, as well as what maybe future opportunities there are for other business development tools. So that is currently in production in the design team and marketing communications. So once we have that, we're going to start engaging with individual merchants just to sort of start that dialogue in that process. So those are the initial steps. I think we had also talking to some of the village managers to talk to them a little about it. Just giving them, they're certainly excited about it. So just talking a little bit more detail with them as well. So
Thanks, Scott. Ginny?
Yeah. Hi, Scott. Could you give us something in writing that explains the process that you'll be using? And then also, do you have a particular order about which village centers you're going to be working with first, or?
no, I don't think it's really, we're going to start with maybe this one here and that one there. But yeah, I'll certainly lay out a roadmap for you if that's what you're interested in.
Okay, and then would you also add whether there's a time frame here as to when you expect to complete it, or?
I don't think it's really something that's completed and done, and then we sort of do this and walk away.
Let me put it another way. Are there certain goals that you want to meet by a certain time, like meet with 3 village centers, the merchants in 3 village centers by a certain date or something like that?
Yeah, I certainly have worked with Milton and Jane on that, and so we have sort of a, where we want to be at certain points.
Yes, right.
So
if you could share that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Well, one of the things also, Scott is the lead on this when it comes to the Columbia Association, but I will be involved and Jane will be involved, but also for lack of a better term, our partner or our collaborator on this will be the Economic Development Authority. They have a resource there that we don't have, and so that's one reason why we wanted to do this. But right now, the plan is for progress reports. The first one we're looking at for coming to the board is in December, and then after December, the board can give us directions whether you want us to come back every 3 months or every 6 months with a time frame. But we want to have consistent progress reports coming to the board to let you know where we are.
Chap, you had a question?
How many feedback did you get from the community or the village about the community share formula?
Well, Gene can expound on it much more, but right now we're still waiting to get feedback from the village association.
The villages have until August 15th.
I sent you 2 emails about the data.
Yes,
one.
I'm aware. Yes, I'm aware.
Can you send that?
If I may, one of your emails, we're working on providing some of the information.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to be able to provide all of it within a time frame, but we can get you some of it by, Susan, by...
Hopefully by the end of the day tomorrow.
Okay, that's great.
4 years worth is all I can.
Because our village is complaining, they never get a feedback or answer. They send you guys email before, but they never get a reply.
No.
I did not get that.
Your village has not. We're responding to your email.
Yeah. Okay, I'll check with her.
All right, Dick?
Just one thing. Any updates or any news from Long Reach?
With regard to
The developer, has there been any discussion or?
I would actually probably defer to EPZ if that's okay.
Well, I mean, what I would say is the county council passed the bill.
Right.
I was just wondering, we've been talking to them about our property there.
Oh, with regard to that, not with Orchard yet, but sort of. This is maybe getting too detailed.
Let me deal. Basically, I can say that I've had a couple meetings with Orchard, and it's not so much negotiations; it's just expressing they're sharing their interests and where they would like to go, because this is a multi-year effort that they're involved in. So I have shared them with some things that CA we're open to and possibilities, but there's no negotiations. There's nothing been finalized. I just wanted to hear what they wanted to do and what are some of their interests.
I had heard that there might be some discussion of selling some of our property there.
No, we've had conversations. Keep in mind, anything like that, I'd have, and I think I stated when I was at the county council meeting, I'm not going to do anything without the board. And so right now, I was just having these conversations because we have 2 properties there. We're the largest landowner in the designated urban renewal area, and I want the Orchard development to make sure that we want to be a part of this process.
Okay, Alan?
You say you wouldn't do anything without the board, but you've had conversations, so conversations are not doing something. What would constitute doing something?
I have not made any decisions on promises. I'm listening. I'm sharing my insights. At some point, I will have sit down with the board because, as I said, there's been no negotiations. I've just been sharing with, for example, it's common knowledge. The two properties we have there are 1960 vintage. I have said, speaking on behalf of myself, I don't want them to look like sore thumbs in a new development. So those are the type of things I'm talking about.
Okay, I guess there's a piece of me that proactively would like us to be involved before we're presented with a decision one way or the other.
No, I'm not going to make any decisions.
Before we're presented with a decision.
Remember, I come to you with recommendations.
Plural, please.
Okay, let's move on. Did you got one more thing?
Yeah, just a quick question. I don't know if it's Milton or Scott. Their approval that said you had to, what I heard, I don't know if this is true, you had to get zoning approval before this whole thing goes into effect. I was trying to understand how a developer can really move ahead or even talk to anybody when he or she doesn't quite own the land yet. It seems like the original intent was to pass whatever it was, the bill, and the developer would then own the land and begin to work on it, negotiate, do the architectural drawings, etc. But I heard there was a condition that wouldn't go through until the zoning was approved. It was conditioned on the zoning approval. I don't understand how a developer can get a bank loan, can afford to pay for architectural drawings, everything that you need for zoning, if you don't in fact own the land. Is that true, or is there something different here?
We have our project manager here this evening, Deputy Director Eddie Gowan.
I'm sorry, I didn't see.
Has been kind of leading the discussions with Orchard. There are some simple questions. We're in the midst of discussing the purchase agreement right now. So.
Well, that's basically my question is, my understanding initially of if it had passed without that condition on it, that the developer would own the property and then begin the process and then eventually ask for zoning approval. I heard, and I'm not sure if this is accurate, that there was a condition put on that bill that basically said, you really don't own this whole thing until the zoning is approved, and I don't understand how you can do that. How can the developer move ahead if he or she doesn't own the land? So could you just explain to me?
There's a mic right there.
Yeah, to me, this is an extremely important project for both CA and and Long Reach and the county, and I just want to know, is it really going to move ahead, or that create some obstacle that made it impossible?
It creates a little bit of an obstacle because it creates a different timeline than we originally anticipated. But right now, we're working on entering into a purchase and sale agreement with them. And once we enter into that agreement, that was always the plan moving forward. So once we enter into that, we'll execute that agreement, and then they'll be the contract purchaser. And as a contract purchaser, they can begin the Village Center redevelopment process. So, and that has always been the plan all along, is that ideally that those negotiations and the contract will be entered into by the end of August, and that they would start phase 1 of the Village Center redevelopment around the fall. Initially, we had anticipated that they would do their due diligence and we would close on the contract, and then they would take ownership, towards the end of the year. But with this new condition that was placed on the resolution, that closing will now be delayed until zoning board approval.
Okay, my other concern is in terms of any delays. There's a point where the zoning board cannot act anymore because of the elections. Are you or the developer going to be able to meet that timeline so that you can get a decision on this case?
That's always been the goal, and so far we are still within our original timeline. Like I said, there are some new obstacles that, in terms of now finalizing the purchase and sale agreement, and so we don't anticipate that we won't be able to make it at this point because of the decision. But I think that it was a very ambitious timeline to begin with, so we have to move quickly.
Okay, thank you very, very much.
Thanks. Okay, move on. You have the report from the Ann Arbor Trust Board of Directors. Any questions? Okay, move on. Audit Committee. Nancy, anything you want to say about?
Yeah, last night we had the meeting with our auditors, and they had high praise for our staff, which I'm not at all surprised. I'm very happy to report that actually things are being done very proactively. They think that our staff is much better than most that they work with, if not all, because they take the training and they're way ahead of the game when it comes to education and putting things into play that need to be put into play. They do it before anybody needs to do it. So at any rate, they said a lot of good things. Also, the numbers are, for the most part, moving in the right direction. And you all got copies, I believe, of the fourth quarter report, so hopefully you took a look at it. And if you have any questions, don't look at me, but talk to Susan.
Thanks, Nancy.
If I may quickly,
Yep. No.
just to let the board know, we had a good meeting. It was involved Michelle Miller and Leslie Barnett and myself had a very good meeting today with Dr. Martin, the Atkins School Superintendent, Dr. Martin Nino, I think is. And we just basically, we have a number of programs that we work together very closely with the school system, and he was aware of them. We just wanted to express our desire, how successful they've been, and make ourselves, let them know that going forward, opportunities for CA and the school system to work together, we're open to those.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Okay, move on board action. Consent agenda. Hearing no objection, it's approved. On to the advisory committees. So I understand, as I said on the email, there's only been one suggested change to any of them. So I'd like a motion to approve all of the charges except for the Columbia Arts Center Advisory Committee. Cal moved. Is there a second? Lynn seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, so the Columbia Arts Center. Is there any discussion on the Columbia Arts Center? Greg?
Yes, this is something I brought up last time, is to add a charge to their list at the end of their, at the end of that document, to have them look at the feasibility and placement of a piece of public art on CA land. Explained last time why I think that's it's overdue, and it's within our mission and everything we do, and I think it fits well with what the Art Center obviously does. So I would like to add a charge at the end of their document that says, consider the feasibility and placement of a piece of permanent public art on Columbia Association land.
So is there any objection to that? Janet, sorry.
While I don't disagree with the sentiment, I had a couple of issues with public art. One, if we're talking permanent public art, I think that that's always a bit of an issue for a budget our size to have a piece of public art that is permanent. One, it's difficult to find something that the majority of people want. Two, I think it's easy for pieces of public art to become dated relatively quickly. So, and three, I feel like the Art Center has so much on its plate that I'm just not sure that's
may
the
not be the
best
right year
use of their
for it.
time with everything else that's going on, including some transitions from, within the Village Center and with the changes in the camps and that kind of thing. I think there's enough other things going on that that it might not be the right year for it.
No.
I mean, unless I'm not understanding the definition of public art, we have the peepal tree, we have the statues of Rouse and his brother, probably other things. I guess my big question though is this something that the Art Center has decided they didn't want to do, and your proposal is that you want us to mandate that they do it? Or is this, I'm not clear why, if it wasn't something that they thought they wanted to do, why are we, I'm not clear on the motive for us to mandate that they do something, charge them with this.
I don't know what you're talking about, Alan. All we're doing is.
This is a charge to
these are our committees. We can ask them to do what we'd like to do. I'm not aware of any resistance to this.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so Greg has moved it. We add that charge. Is there a second to Greg's?
Second.
Nancy seconded.
A little more discussion.
Yeah, well, yeah, we can.
I get nervous over public art. I lived in Chicago when there was quite a bit of controversy over putting the Picasso sculpture in front of the county building. There was public sentiment that what was really needed was a statue of Ernie Banks, the baseball player. And if we're going to be installing public art, I want to make damn sure that we have a very, very capable jury selecting the art and making a recommendation. I would, particularly if it's going to be a permanent piece.
I mean, I've tried to make this as open as I can. I mean, look at the feasibility, look at the placement. They can come back and say it's not feasible, there's no place for it.
Okay, well.
That's all this is about. We haven't done this in decades.
Mhm.
Yes, we have a peepal tree. Yes, we have a statue, downtown, but we haven't looked at it in decades. That's all this is saying. This isn't deciding anything. It's just having a group of artists look at the feasibility of this possibility.
Okay, as long as we're just examining it.
All right, Nancy, any other discussion?
Well, I would come out in support of Greg's motion because I feel that this community needs, deserves. And public art, you might not like it, but somebody else will. That's the meaning of art. It means different things to different people. So it's not something you necessarily need to like, but hopefully you can develop an appreciation for, or at least respect the fact that it's there, and there might be another piece somewhere else that you would like. I mean, I'm a huge advocate of this, and I really hope that we can all get behind it and support it.
So,
And then now.
in the town center, there are new buildings there. They have a new sculpture there, yellow, kind of yellow and green something. Is that a public art? Belong to public arts?
Yeah.
Who paid for that?
The developer.
It's required for public projects that a certain percentage go toward, for commercial development, a certain percentage must go toward public art.
So why our village center didn't have similar public art?
It's not, yeah, it's
Not CA.
Not CA.
Lynn and then Alan.
No. Is this something that should probably be considered with the redevelopment of Longreach as part of the whole process? You know, it seems like it would all be interrelated.
I think Greg's motion was just in general to look at public art for Columbia somewhere. Okay.
That's how I
Alan?
So Greg, I take your point, and I think maybe rather, I don't know if this could be a friendly amendment or not, but rather than limiting it to a piece of public art, how about asking the Art Center to look at public art in Columbia and propose a direction, a plan, a policy, something that would give us some direction rather than limiting it to one piece. This might speak to Dick's concern about, if we focus on just the one piece, then and that's the only one we're considering, then that's could be a lot of forces speaking into that one. If it's more about helping us with, which these are advisory committees, helping us with direction.
I don't have a problem with making, I said a piece, we can make it one or more pieces of public art, but let's not get mired in a bureaucratic, let's let them work.
Sherry and then Janet.
I was just going to say, I think what we're discovering this year through this whole 50th celebration is that there are a lot of things to celebrate in Columbia, and there will be more milestones in the future. So having some kind of policy, or at least some sort of direction, if we so choose, or if communities wish to commemorate in different kinds of ways, it would be nice to have at least some basic guideline or direction for how that might come into being.
Janet.
So I think this kind of falls under micromanaging of the advisory committee. And I do think the semantics matter, because if you're talking about them recommending specific pieces, I think, to Alan's point, if there's them advising on the role of public art in Columbia, that might be a different charge, but.
I'm done.
Okay. No, we have the motion, and it's been seconded. So all those in favor of adding the charge.
Can we hear the motion again?
Sure. Greg.
Taking Alan's advice or recommendation, consider the feasibility and placement of one or more pieces of permanent public art on Columbia Association land.
Okay. All those in favor. I'm going to have to write this down now. Let's see. Alan, Chow, Ginny, Dick, Nancy, Sherry, Greg, Andy. Opposed. Janet, abstain. Lynn, what?
You abstaining from abstaining?
Which way are you voting?
What? No.
No. Okay. 2 no's. All right. So now, motion to approve the Art Center charges. Dick moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Greg seconded. Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Could you read that again? It's hard to do 2 things at once.
Oh, no, we're just voting now on the charges as amended.
The charges. Oh, yes.
Okay. Alan, Chow, Ginny, Dick, Nancy, Sherry, Greg, Lynn, Andy opposed. Abstain. Janet is abstaining. Hope I got this. All right, thank you. On to Newtown zoning. I want to thank Val and Amy for coming tonight and agreeing, being here. So I'd like Jane, she's bringing up a little briefing. But as I kind of said, I would like to, we are going to have other discussions on Newtown zoning. This is only the beginning. But I would like to make sure that the board does have an understanding on Newtown zoning. And so Jane is gonna start. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you. I think in your email earlier today, Andy, you said you wanted to have the board have an overview, and then to discuss the employment areas and then the issues. Is that right? So my presentation, I will take a pause for the industrial employment before we go through the issues then.
Can somebody turn on that? Greg? Can you turn on that? Yeah. Screen.
She can go.
Maybe.
When it rains, it pours, I guess. With
I think
technology.
so.
Exceeds my technological ability.
No, it might be because something is offline here. Part of this is offline.
Okay, so I wanted to go through an overview of Newtown zoning. First, just about zoning authority in general. And for those of you who have been sitting on the board for some years, this is a repeat. But for the 6 of you who were not here 3 years ago, this would be new material. So I will go through it. If you have any questions, we also have some county experts here. So under the law, Maryland law, counties and cities are delegated certain powers to control land use. And the code then of Howard County explains the authority to various bodies. So there are various responsibilities for the council, the zoning board, planning board, the department, and then the hearing examiner and the Board of Appeals. This is a telegram, so today would be a text, right? And it says 100% zoning approved at 3:05 on August 10, 1965. Jim Rouse was on vacation in Canada at his camp that he went to, and this is from his lawyer. But it's a great thing in the archives to have. So the regulations were adopted then in 1965 as negotiated with the county commissioners. They had been written by the Rouse Company and their attorneys, but they were negotiated. And then those stood essentially with very minimal regulation changes until 2009. And in 2009, we had the Village Center redevelopment process, and I'll return to that in a minute. And then in 2010, there was the downtown development zoning and plan. And then in this past year, of course, we had the amendments mostly to do with the affordable housing changes. There are 14,272 point something, almost 3 acres of Newtown zone. But 10%, of Columbia, of people paying the assessment and business change center are not zoned Newtown. And I think you're all aware of that. And I'm not talking about the out parcels, I'm talking about parcels. And the 2 big areas are Dorsey Search Village, which is not zoned Newtown, that's at the northern end. And the other area is, that you see down there in blue and red, is Gateway and some of the Snowden corridor. So those are not controlled by Newtown. The other non-light blue areas are all the other zoning districts, where many of those are out parcels. Some of them are not out parcels, the college and so forth. So their provisions, as it was adopted, were that it had to have a district size of some size. Of course, we meet that, and there's been no other Newtown zoning put down in the county. That it was incredibly flexible overall, except to not allow heavy manufacturing and mobile homes. Of course, that was contained by some subsequent approvals of documents that I'll talk about, but overall it was very flexible. Open space preservation is set at 36%. It was actually less in the beginning until the Middle Patuxent environmental area was turned over to be natural area and not developed, but 36 is where it's at. And then it has we have an overall density cap, 25 land use per acre gross, meaning all the land of Columbia. And there are mixed use requirements. Thou shalt not have more or less than these kinds of percentages, and this is right from the ordinance. I'll just go through one, the open space one. So it has a minimum of 36, doesn't have a maximum, could be more. And for each kind of land use, and I'll go through later where we are today on that. And we're actually right in alignment with that as far as the approvals. This is the approval process for areas that are not downtown in the villages. There's a preliminary development plan, and that was approved early on, and it set down the general framework. And today, still, only the original petitioner, so the master planner, which is the Howard Hughes Corporation, can make petition to change that. And that is common in many ordinances related to master plan districts, but it's something that we live with today. That perhaps doesn't work as well for us today as it did for the developer then, because there are many different owners. And then any amendment to that is done by the zoning board. This is the PDP, the document I just spoke about. Yeah, I know at this scale it's not legible, nor the coloring, but it shows the residential areas, employment areas, and so forth, open space.
What would be an example of a change that the developer has asked for in this over time?
Well, we just had one, did we not, related to the density of grandfather's nursery. So that area was not approved for the residential development, and the grandfather's nursery is over in Long Ridge and it's being redeveloped. And so Howard Hughes had to sign off on that. Correct.
The Long Ridge Village Center.
And yes, and the Long Ridge Village Center would be another. Yes.
Did the comprehensive sketch plan ever show up?
I don't know about that one, but I can ask Val. No, okay. So the comprehensive sketch plan was the next level down. So you had this broad kind of land use and delineation of uses and things. The sketch plan was one level down. It had some locations for public
If that level is missing,
I'll get to that, and whether it's important or not, I'll leave to somebody else. But this is the interim stage of kind of more details where public uses and roads and so forth would go. Again, only the original petitioner could change that, and the planning board has this decision-making power. Yes.
So Jim, you said the original petitioner, Howard Hughes, right? Is there a deadline they will lose their right to the petition to amend the?
So no. So in the language is the original petitioner. That's what it says. So that is an issue that is with us, and it has been solved for the village center and then downtown, but it still remains for the rest of Columbia. And that's something we'll talk about in a little bit. The next step is the final development plan. So that is really confirming the broad land uses, the access, and so forth. And the planning board has that decision-making power. I want to show you a map that shows the 265 FDPs. And these are wonderfully digitized, and this map is publicly available on the DPZ's website. It shows every FDP. You can click on it, you can get the information, you can print it. If you can read it, they're scanned documents from decades ago. Andy is familiar with that. And this shows the broad characterization. So the employment lands are in purple, employment industrial, and you can see down towards the bottom, you would be in Rivers Industrial Park or along Snowden. You up to the north of the map, you would see the Red Branch area in purple. Right in the middle is red, and that is the mall. And then green is open space. Yellows are generally residential. So it's just very complex. This shows that same matrix that I showed at the beginning in the ordinance, the mins and maximums by land use type. And this shows how many acres have been approved by each category by the county, and in blue the percentage of those approvals. And it all fits in within the min and max. That is what was approved in the FDP. So it said, you know, the acres of industrial, right? How it's actually developed on the ground is another matter, and Val will speak about that, or did you want to talk about that?
I can. So as Jane describes, the FDPs are a really important document because they get into the land use details of what types of land uses are permitted within each FDP area. So one of the topics I understand that you want to discuss this evening is deals with the industrial areas. So one of the things that I've asked staff to do is, well, why don't we go through some of the older industrial areas in Columbia and actually do an analysis of what are the land uses and compare those to the FDPs. And that's going to be a really interesting comparison to see how what may have been the intent and what are the results. And I think what we'll find is that because of the language in the FDPs, and the perfect example, we've been dealing lately with the FDP area in and around the Snowden River Parkway area, and it has one of the land use types compatible, let's see here, ancillary or, it's just strictly ancillary or compatible with industrial uses. Well, that was a perfect statement that I'm sure that if I were a developer, I'd want to have maximum flexibility on what I can do because where I grew up, my dad was able to walk to work, so I could claim, well, I can make residential compatible with industrial uses because the whole concept of live work and the ability to walk there. Mm-hmm. And so I think that as a result of having this kind of open and at times vague language, it's probably opened up a whole series of different uses that may not have been originally envisioned, but are permitted based on the language in the FDPs. So,
yeah.
So, what's the difference between industry and commercial? There are two zones. What's the difference between them?
Well, that's a very good question. Mm-hmm. What is it?
You might sort of like industry probably manufacture something or do
that could be. In some communities, industry is defined as a zone district where things are actually produced, manufactured, assembled, and things like that. In other communities where there isn't perhaps the culture or history of manufacturing, industry may relate to what I'll call service commercial types of land uses. That it is a plumbing supply place where there may be a wholesale or a retail sales area associated with it, but once you walk through that door to get into the back, it's warehousing, it's distribution, and it's truck service at the back. So this question of what constitutes industry, it really varies by jurisdiction.
And I might add that it has changed quite a bit over time.
How about auto repair?
What is it here? 1965 was probably much clearer, manufacturing and assembly and so forth. And now it's all these other things as well.
How about auto repair? Is that industry or commercial?
Again, I hate to constantly use this term. It depends. It depends on how an individual jurisdiction would view something like that. In some jurisdictions, heavy repair services like truck repair, heavy equipment vehicle repair, that might be located in an industrial district. In other jurisdictions, vehicle repair may not be, depending on the goals of economic development. We don't want to have a plethora of transmission shops in our industrial areas. We want to keep those open and available when industry really chooses to move there. So those may be relegated to the either a light industrial district or it may fall into a heavy commercial district.
Val, I'm not, with all due respect, I'm not clear why you're talking about some places, other places. We're talking about Columbia and Newtown. So how do we define it?
Because he asked me
Yes,
how do you define
or in
industry?
Howard County, how do we define it?
Depends.
But how do we define it here?
Yes.
We have two districts. One is the M2 manufacturing district, which is our heavy industrial district, which is located primarily to the east of Route 1. The recycling facility, I can't remember who owns that. Waste Management Inc. I think it used to be Browning Ferris used to be over there, or maybe they still are. We have the ability to produce asphalt and various types of products like that. And then our lighter industrial districts are really focused more on warehouse and distribution. As Mr. Matthews indicated, the EDA has just recently completed a new vision plan, or a new strategic plan, sorry. It's a new strategic plan, and I was shocked. I said on that committee how much Howard County relies on warehouse and distribution. It's given our economic kind of complexion and all of that, it's really an unusual situation that we have such a robust warehouse and distribution industry in the county.
So how would you characterize the 11% of industrial Newtown land as compared to the 7% commercial? How should we conceive of those two categories in Newtown?
I could tell you better after we do the analysis of what the land use mix is. So.
Yeah, because I think what this is what was approved. So if it's in the industrial district, that would have been called industrial. And so the FDPs. I don't think that these necessarily account for what's on the ground today.
Right.
So that's what you're going to do. And so it might not match that at all. And that's what we don't know.
So I'd just like to point out to the board, if you look at the report that talked about industrial land, if you go to the very, very end, appendix number 6, page like 62 and 63, that tells you what M1 is in Howard County today. So anything listed in there is basically acceptable in an industrial
And it's not all
land.
industrial uses.
And it's not all. It's a lot. And then following that, you can see what M2 is. M2 has very few uses, comparatively speaking.
Some of Gateway is M1, am I not?
Yes, Gateway, a lot of Gateways all almost M1.
Which is, I'm going to move on to.
Just one quick question. I am sure the lawyers love the ambiguity that we have here. Would it make sense, or should we encourage an effort to be more definitive and specific, or should we leave it kind of loose? I mean, do you have any?
That's part of our discussion. That's part of our discussion
And I do
coming up.
think that the consultants that the county has hired are going to be looking all throughout the county, those zoning districts. Do they make sense? Are they getting the results that we would expect? And is there another way to explain it and oversee it? So I think that's kind of to come as far as what the recommendations would be.
Jenny.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I think one of the issues is going to be what we call employment centers like Red Branch, Oakland, along Snowden, Broken Land Parkway, et cetera. One of the issues that we keep hearing about is should it all be what we think of as employment office, et cetera, and then retail going in there, is that or is that not okay and acceptable? Or is it just retail like a little deli that meets the needs of those people, but you don't want people from the outside coming in? And that's the big issue, what type of retail, I think.
Okay, Jane,
Okay, so we were at FTP stage, and then at the next stage is essentially the site development plan. Again, this is outside of village centers and downtown. And That is the engineering drawings, and that's the last step in this approval process before you go and get your building permits and all of those kinds of things. Okay, so the village center is different. In 2009, that was changed. So the petitioner became not the original petitioner, but any fee simple landowner. So if CA owns property, we could put a proposal in. If Kimco owns property, they could put in money. If county owns a property or Orchard Development, they can put in a proposal. And then, as we know, it's a multi-step process that includes both the county and the village association, and it defines roles for those. And then the planning board must act, the zoning board approves, and then the planning board makes the decision on the SDP. But at the FDP's level, it's the zoning board. So it's a long process to get through, and there's public involvement, as you know, in multiple steps. Yes?
Who has standing to appeal the decisions? I understand that there's a little bit of confusion because in the county code, it says that the people in section have that, and then you go to section and it doesn't exist.
I say I can't answer that question definitively, and I wondered if to spend time here today on Newtown.
Yeah, I was going to say it doesn't really apply quite to Newtown, but we can look and see what an answer might be for that.
It's an important question because.
Yeah, but we can put it on the list to be answered.
Well, okay, could we put that on the
in
list?
downtown Columbia, then the process is essentially in 2010, that was changed as well. Again, only the fee simple owner, any owner may propose. And the PDP and anything else like that, that is not applicable anymore. Essentially, it starts again. But it has to be within the in conformance with the plan and all the other requirements in the plan and the zoning ordinance. This is, the 16-step process, and then the planning board has the approval for the FDP.
Andy, quick question. The previous slide on the village plan, does the county have any, are you going to be looking at how to streamline that process on Council Bill 29?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
The consultants to the county who's hired is definitely heard that loud and clear, both the downtown and the way he said it the other night was you can have that same goal and you might have a different tool to get there.
Right. Thank you very much.
Chapman.
So the county council has the final authority to approve or disapprove of decisions, is that right? Or
No,
not?
in downtown it's the planning board.
Oh,
Council has already acted. They by resolution they had the plan, and then by bill they changed the zoning.
for other, like county council has the final authority to approve this.
Sorry, no, for development approval, if you are proposing to build something in downtown, and you go through this downtown process, it's the planning board who has decision-making process.
Sure.
Powers.
Yeah, on under the village centers, it said a role for the community.
Yeah.
So what does that mean in?
So if you're not familiar, this is quite different. What this says is the developer, the village has an opportunity to have a village center vision plan. It's not a part of the county's plan, but their ideas about how they want their future to unfold. And then the developer, and then the proposal forward, the village essentially has more influence than a normal stakeholder, because usually staff would consider the applicant's application and put out a technical staff report. And then we would come and make testimony, or the village would. But here the village is allowed to essentially comment and have a role prior to the applicant going through the county process.
Mm-hmm. But it's still a comment role.
Yeah.
So everything that's there is guidelines,
right.
But it is not, nothing is a requirement, and it's still a process really of testimony.
Yeah, and I think it's important to, when I began, the reason I spent a little time on who has zoning and planning authority, it's government. So all of us have different roles and different players, and this is a new and expanded role for a stakeholder, which is the Village Association, different from any other. And I think so it's very different, but the power to make the decision is still with the various government agencies and electeds. Okay, so what I would like to do is pause now. I was going to go through the list of issues. Do you want me to do that? Because industrial was part of that, but how would you like to do it?
Makes sense.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do the issues.
Okay, so I'll quickly go through these. So we already talked about the original petitioner requirement. It seems good for the developer at the time of doing something, but 50 years, more than 50 years later, it is something that is peculiar, unwieldy. There needs to be another way to address that. And we already have a solution for the villages in downtown. The original land use minimums and maximums, do those make sense? And should there be any, as far as carrying those forward? Those were essentially for the original Columbia, to make sure that it all was mixed use. We had single family, had apartments. So that's kind of done, that metric. It's been met. But what role do these play going forward? Because they don't really represent what's on the ground today. So what is, are they should be changed or brought forward? In particular, the residential cap, that an applicant had to go to Howard Hughes and then go to the county, all the way through to the county, to the council, to get one more dwelling unit because we're maxed out under the dwelling unit cap. Just say a neighborhood had a fire or an area really fell down and you wanted to redevelop it, and to do that you wanted to build more density or different kind of buildings. Wouldn't you want the flexibility? So that's something that definitely should be looked at and going forward. Not the sky's the limit, but the current cap is a detriment for some areas. If you wanted to add residential to an area outside of downtown, even the village centers don't have that density.
Jane, going back to the second bullet, I don't want to debate it, but I'm trying to understand it. You made a statement, you said it doesn't reflect what's on the ground.
Right.
If there were minimums and maximums, how did it happen that it doesn't,
So if you said, just repeat what Val said, the industrial FDPs, many of them have the same language. It's changed over years. Thank you for the great analysis you did, Andy. But it says, industrial uses such as these, and other uses such as these, and anything that's ancillary or compatible. So a lot of approvals, so that was the FDP, and that sets down the zoning in the law and with the parcel. But then when you come forward and you say you want further details, now it's some retail, some service industries. So what has been approved at the detail level is different than the FDP level.
These would have been mostly planning board approvals?
Yes, there would have been a planning board, but
some may have been staff interpretation.
Right, that's true. Right, but it's not that somebody did something wrong. It's the language that is in those FDPs. Can you imagine? I mean, usually you have a zoning ordinance and you're in a certain district and it has rules. And if the rules aren't clear, then you have sometimes things happen that you might have unintended effects. And I would say to you that the FDPs at the time, they were written for a developer who wanted maximum flexibility. And so we've carried that forward. And as our economy has changed, so we don't have as much industry, and we have more distribution, we have much more retail, things are changing. It's not peculiar to here, Alan. It's all over the country, the same issue. How much industrial land do you need, and what is it being used for? And you certainly want cement mixers because you can't import cement mixers from Chicago. Cement, you have to have it local. So that's where we are, and I think that DPC staff is going to analyze the actual uses. It's something we actually recommended in the market study that we did together on the Dobbin and Snowden corridor. So to do it for the other districts, I think is smart. So we already spoke of 265 FDPs plus amendments to those, and that's incredibly difficult to administrate. I think my colleagues would agree. Nor for us as lay people to understand what is approved. Now that they have it on the web, it's much easier, but still to read all of that. And as you can see, many people have different interpretations as well. And that can be improved through improvements to the zoning ordinance. Andy's point and others as well, the transitioning of employment, industrial areas and corridors. So, it wasn't thought of that way, and we're seeing changes. The whole redevelopment and infill. So we hear throughout the county, but also in areas like ours that are built out in many areas, angst about the fill-in parcels, right? Because that's what infill is. There's nothing there now, and you thought it was going to be green. I don't know why. Somebody has that property, and they have development rights on it. Or redevelopment, something is scraped off and then replaced by something to be bigger, so a house that doesn't fit in. So there are no standards or standards in Newtown related to that. And so standards, as our consultant, the county's consultant said, standards mean shall. Guidelines mean should. So you like to have some things that you could agree on and then be able to have those go forward. You can have guidelines. Sometimes those are looser, but this is something that's probably needed. We've heard discussions about out parcels. So there's parcels, and all of the hard to develop out parcels that are not under the CA charge, they're coming in. You see 2 houses over here and 3 houses, and they're probably the hard to develop lots. And sometimes people have said they don't look like Columbia. So how would that be? How can that be addressed? This is something that staff has raised. We don't have any MIHU requirement, moderate income housing, the inclusionary housing requirement in Newtown. It was excluded from Newtown because there was a feeling that Columbia had its share of affordable housing. Many districts that allow multifamily or townhouses in them around the county have that requirement. So as we're moving forward, is there a reason to look at that? And what is the demand and need for affordable housing versus fair share and all of that?
But there were no houses in Columbia when this was decided originally.
No, Newtown, MIHU came later. So it was added to other districts. It was not added to Newtown. Am I understanding?
But there was no requirement back in '65
for what?
For moderate income housing or
No,
any kind of provision for low
it was
income
part of the
housing.
original developer's mission. Yeah. So,
But Jane, but the council also allowed for fee in lieu of the development on site. You could give some money in and you could build it elsewhere. But anyway, no, that's okay. That's
it sometimes allows that.
Yeah.
So we all know this, but I'll say it because the review process for downtown the villages is very complex and lengthy, and certainly to get to the same ends, there might be a shorter and better way. And finally, this is really important in zoning ordinances. You have the intent of the zoning ordinance, and Newtown is the only one in the county's ordinance that has none. And usually that would connect it to what the purpose of it. And I say here that you could have the aspirational, what is the Newtown meant to achieve, some of the values of the community. Those are the issues that staff has. Andy, did you want to pivot to?
I was going to say, one of the reasons I was asking for us to look at the employment center type land, commercial and industrial, is that's the land that is actually changing the most. If you remember the map that goes up there. I mean, the residential land is all built out. And there aren't going to be any major changes in the near term to any of that. And the open space is pretty well. We own most of it. If you're in the county, that's about almost all of it. But the areas that are changing, the areas that I've heard people talk about, have been basically the industrial and the commercial areas, particularly along the major routes in the village centers downtown. That's all commercial land. So I had done a little analysis because part of the problem is people come up and, well, what can you really do? So I did actually go back and look at all the FDPs and pull out uses for industrial land and uses for preliminary for employment center land, and I did it FDP by FDP. And so
Is
if
that
you
all your stuff in the back?
yeah, that's
Oh my God. Thank you.
Let me tell you, the FDPs are sometimes impossible to read. It is so nice to have them online. It is really nice. You can call them up. But sometimes they're handwritten inside. But anyway, I mean, the purpose behind this was really, and then I put it in appendices, and this is more for people who want to look at this later. It just never was done. I tried looking at the county, I tried looking down in the archives. But FDPs are numbered in order. So FDP 1 means it was the first FDP. FDP 260 means it's way down the line, probably 1980s, 1990s. So you can look a little bit about how things have changed over the years. And then the other one, there's a second appendix on both reports, and that categorizes. If you look, we have a number of industrial parks. Sealing, Guilford, Rivers, Oakland, yeah. So I just consolidated all the FDPs in those areas so that if you wanted to look at Oakland, you can go there and just see these are the FDPs that apply to Oakland, these are the uses. And then for the commercial, I did neighborhood centers, villages, town center, other areas. So that way, if you want to look in particular, if you want to look at like village center, you can compare just what the village centers are. So that was more for historical purposes, so if people want to look at it, they have something to refer to. But in looking at all these, I came to the same conclusion that Jane has talked about. There are 265 of these. They're all over the place in terms of language. It is very, very difficult to determine what really is allowed on what parcel of land, even within the same development. Even within Oakland, there are different FDPs done at different times on different parcels of land at Oakland, even though you'd be hard-pressed to tell the difference. And they were done in different time periods, and so you can see that some things have changed and some things haven't. So I did a little bit of an analysis, and some of the issues I came up with were very similar to what Jane had said, that there's this whole question of we had land which was set aside for industrial, which under the original Rouse vision is industry, manufacturing. In the county, that would be like M1 and M2. And then the commercial was basically looked at as retail, and that's B1, B2, right. Business 1, Business 2, and the shopping center. But as we kind of know, the retail uses have kind of leaked into the industrial land uses. I was thinking of a very good example when I talk about when there's an industrial building in Sealing Industrial Park that now has a barber shop. Well, you wouldn't, I mean, even in Rouse's time, you would not have considered
manufacturing hair clipping.
Right, yeah. A barber shop is part of the manufacturing. And so there is a really big disconnect between what the layout of the land says from FDP to what is actually going on in those particular areas.
Andy, a good example is Oakland, okay? Wendy's, the Pizza Hut, all of that is part of that employment, Oakland. And you would normally look at that as what? Retail B1?
B1.
Right. Commercial.
Alan.
Okay, so I'm incredibly in awe of your brain that can look through all these things, because I would not be able to do it. I'm also experiencing for myself, I don't know if anybody else is, and I felt it when I looked at a 300-page packet for today, and that doesn't include the young people's stuff, awash in way too much information. So I guess my question, and depending upon the answer, my request of the staff, Jane, I don't know how long ago, it wasn't too long ago, we agreed on some principles that we wanted to see for Columbia going forward. And so I'm wondering if, in light of those principles, has the staff looked at these issues you've identified and come up with a set of recommendations around those issues that will help focus us with some pros and cons and alternatives so that not all of us can do what Andy did and understand this all.
I think this is very helpful. Thank you, Alan. Because you did approve this a couple of years ago, and this was done in anticipation of the design review. And so I think it's important. Some of it's about our own values, and some of it specifically says at the end, how will we use this? And we have conversations with the county government and others related to moving forward on development and zoning matters. I think that the county has hired a really good consulting help, and that's what we're looking to find out, what the best minds in the nation as far as development regulations and processes comes up with, both what are the issues here and across the county, and what are some ways of organizing and redoing the zoning ordinance and other ordinances that will help us move forward as a county. So I would tell you, if I had hired a consultant, I would have loved to have hired Don Elliott. He was our speaker here a couple of years ago. I think very ahead of him, and I would tell you to wait for the consultant's recommendation, because he's getting paid to do that quite well, and a lot of analysis that he will do, and so I would rely first to hear what he has to say, and then see if I would agree with it, or if there's anything else that I would advocate for.
So I'd just like to add, the consultant is going to come back and report, but I think in the meanwhile, what the board really might want to do is look at three questions. I mean, one of the questions is, are there any other issues that we should be? I mean, there's a nice set of issues that Jane has put together based on a number of things, but are there any other issues that we should really consider in this general mix? So that's question number one. Question number two is, we always talk about, Columbia as a planned community and everything, and so the question I would ask in the board is, well, what do you think are the key characteristics of Columbia that in your mind constitute, the plan? I mean, because we have different ideas, but it would be nice to kind of see what are the key characteristics that each of you think, or go back to your villages, that then come back, and then that helps feed us for when we get the recommendations and seeing, what do we think really are. And then
What's the third?
The third one is kind of the parallel of that. What do you think actually violates the plan? I mean, we always talk about, well, what do you think are the characteristics? Okay, sometimes you can, but sometimes there's the other part, which is, what do you think actually is not part of the plan? What do you think violates the plan? What has been done or could possibly be done that violates the plan? And I think if the board thinks about those three, we can put together some of our thoughts and talk about it and wait for the recommendations to come back from the consultant.
If I may, that is exactly when I asked the consultant in public on Tuesday night. People talk about planned community, and you're going to hear that. What is it that you as a consultant would like to understand when people mean? He said exactly what Andy just said. Explain to me what you value and what things are happening that are a violation of that, so that he would understand that and be able to take it into his evaluation. So
and the part of it too is then it gives the board kind of some parameters to think about changes and what should happen down the line. Dick, and then I think Ginny, and then Alan.
Well, this is pretty exciting stuff. I guess we have to wait for the consultant to come back to us. But I'm curious to know, is our consultant looking at this as two separate pieces? Newtown on one hand and the county in general on the other? Or do they, can we be, Val, attack that one if you can.
Okay. Well, first, I just want to describe what it is that the consultant is doing. I had worked with Don Elliott before I came to the county on some zoning code work, and my experience writing zoning regulations, I would say that the approach that they're taking is exactly like you would do in any jurisdiction across the country, which is to break the code code writing in two pieces. The first part is an assessment of what do you have. You analyze the existing development regulations. We do not have a compiled table of land uses. They're all written by chapter. And so that's one of the first things that they've done is they've taken all of the various land uses by district and have put them in a table. And I can't remember how many rows, how many columns across, but it's a pretty compelling spreadsheet to see, well, how does all of this stuff stack up? Where are certain things permitted? Where aren't they permitted? So that they can begin to understand what is the lay of the land with our regulations. The other part of that equation is reaching out to the public. They were out here in March, and we had a series of small focus group meetings by topical area. We had the agricultural community represented. We had the environmental community represented. We had citizen groups represented. We had the developer community represented. So, and we asked those very same questions. What's working well? What's not working? And taking all of that information then and churning it, coming back out to Howard County like they just did. Trying to remember, I guess that was this week. It's all kind of blurred in. We've had a series of late night meetings all this week so far. To ask more targeted questions, and the more targeted questions are actually ones that Jane had up here earlier. One in the county, it may not be as applicable in Newtown, but conditional uses. And conditional uses are basically uses that are inherently compatible with a particular district, but because of some unique attributes to that land use, they require another level of review. I'll use the perfect example, restaurants. A sit-down restaurant has much different impact than a drive-through restaurant would. So a sit-down restaurant may be permitted in a particular district, but a drive-through restaurant is a conditional use because you have to deal with additional traffic. You may have issues of trash. You may have issues of the order board. So now if you're right next to a fast food restaurant with your home, I don't want to be listening to I'll have fries and a bowl, all night long. So those things then become conditional land uses, and you look at are those a good fit in this particular location. The other thing that we heard loud and clear, again, was an issue that Jane had raised, infill development. And as luck would have it, I got a telephone call or an email today from an individual in the St. John's Lane area, not in Newtown. I have 1.65 acres of land in an R20 district where 20,000 square foot lots are permitted. Can I develop my property? And the answer is probably yes. And so based on the yield calculation, there could be 3 individual homes on that one lot, but the neighbors see it, well, there's a house on a large lot. We thought that was going to be there permanently. Well, according to the zoning regulations, a 20,000 square foot lot is permitted, and it's the shock of surprise where either new houses arrived or the existing house is torn down and that piece of property is re-subdivided to accommodate residential. And then the question is, what is the character of that new residential? Does it fit within the context of surrounding homes? So that was another issue. Others have been this urban, rural, the farm and suburbia tension line. That's an issue. And so they came back and asked a series of targeted questions. We also have had a survey out there on our website. We have received, 550 responses, something like that. I've read every one of them, and I can tell you that there's a group that basically says, we don't want Howard County to grow anymore. We don't want change, which is not a surprise. I mean, that's the kind of comment that you'll get in a lot of places across the country. But then a lot of them really kind of dug deeper, and they got into this whole issue of compatibility, design, and things like that. So now the consultant, based on what they've heard at this stage, they're going to be coming back with some initial approaches to explore whether or not the roadmap forward makes sense. And ultimately, they're going to be coming back in January, February with a draft staff plan. We're going to be reviewing that draft staff plan. And again, the draft staff plan for this is the roadmap forward. It's not regulations or anything like that. It's the second phase of the project. So in January, February, we'll be reviewing the recommendations on next steps forward, what they think should be kept, what should be modified, but not the language of what, how that's done. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take a break. The DPZ staff, we have a budget for the next stage of this project, which is to actually write the development regulations. That may or may not be Clarion doing that work. So what we're going to be hoping for then in, let's see here, that would be late 2018, early 2019, hopefully, we have a consultant on board. So from that point forward, the next phase of the project will proceed. That's the writing of the regulations, and we anticipate that to be about a 2-year process.
Well, my concern, I think it's the concern of every board member here, is of course Columbia has a very unique identity within the county, and that's something we don't want to lose.
Okay.
And so I think there is a concern that when we do an overall zoning analysis, planning and zoning analysis, that we want to be able to preserve our identity
So
as
what
a
is
unique
that?
community.
I'll go back to what Mr. Stack said is, tell me about that identity.
Mm-hmm.
Zoning regulations deal with physical form, with measurable things, with land uses. So what is it that makes Columbia a unique place that can be reflected in development regulations? Because so far I've heard a lot. And I lived in Columbia for 13 years, so I know Columbia. I understand Columbia. I lived in 2 village centers. So from a regulation standpoint, what is it that you all think is important to be reflected in the regulations?
That's a good question.
I would answer that by saying that I'm not thrilled with the proposal that came through for the Royal Farms, for example, and what's happening along that. What's the name of that? I can never remember. Snowden River. It's packed with traffic. It's the worst road in all of Columbia. And all those little shops that popped up, it's almost like becoming a Route 1. Signage is an issue because we obviously, in traditional Columbia, you don't have the bright and obnoxious signs.
Right.
So it's a much more natural and tempered look, and Snowden River does not have that look.
Okay.
So those are good things.
That's
to
exactly
list.
what we're looking for.
Ginny. Sorry, I skipped Ginny and Alan. I apologize.
It may be a matter of when Snowden River will look like that with all the development going on. But anyway, this is under number 1 that Andy had other issues, but I think it may more be an issue for staff. But the Oakland, to get back to the industrial parks, the Oakland Ridge Industrial Park on 108, a bunch of us on our village board in Oakland Mills met with the architectural committee there on an issue of a used car lot. Well, we dealt with that. We got rid of it. But the issue we were told is that park will be 50 years old. The covenants will no longer apply. So they are concerned, the architectural committee for the industrial park, are concerned that people do anything they want. And I don't know quite how that relates to what we're working on and how we deal with that, or do we or don't we? Because you do have Longreach there, Phelps Lock, you have Glenmont, and you have Thunder Hill adjacent to that. So I don't know if we can find out if there is a time when all these covenants expire, like Oakland Ridge Industrial Park, or is that true?
Well,
Because they can build, they could probably build up then and all
so
sorts of
staff,
things. which it may
so
be
staff is working on the commercial covenants,
for
the
okay, so
architectural.
how does that mesh with
So
development?
that it will have to mesh at some point down the line.
With development.
It doesn't quite go with the zoning.
Well,
Okay.
if
Well,
I
no,
could
I
just
understand
comment on
that, but it's,
we think that it's going to be important to understand the covenants. And so we are going to be looking at the covenants to better understand the implications. Which ones are expiring, and if covenants are driving development patterns and perhaps inhibiting certain levels of flexibility. One, is that a desirable thing? And two, what can be done to modify that? So we're going to be looking at covenants, the
Okay, thank you.
implications of covenants as
Thank
well.
you.
Well, we're also looking too. I mean,
Maybe
think
there's
back.
a memo that the Sherry Fanoff sent the rest of the board in the spring, and perhaps Jimmy could get a copy of that.
Alan, and then Lynn and Greg.
So two things. I would add to your, and you're the expert on zoning, certainly. Zoning deals with physical form uses, but it also deals with process. And so for me, that's a place where we might be wanting to focus in terms of how is process working or not working to get the result we want. For example, as a question, I haven't come down as an answer for me yet. Does having a county planning board cover both Columbia and Newtown and non-Newtown? Does that make sense, or would it make more sense to have a Newtown planning board to be more focused? So I was going to ask you about timeline, and then you sort of said the timeline, but I'm not sure if I heard it all, because it sounded like there were two steps. Well, the consultant's going to give you a product, and you're going to spend early 2018 looking at it, and then there's this break for 10 months or 8 months, whatever, and then somewhere in late 18 and 19, you're going to start writing regulations, and it's going to take you 2 years. I guess I'm not clear what I'm trying to figure out. Let me say what my purpose is for asking. I'm trying to figure out where we could be, what we need to be paying attention to, so that we're not always being reactive, but we can be proactive and have maximum impact from our point of view.
How many of you have attended so far a zoning workshop? So, one, I would encourage you to attend the zoning workshops when our consultants are back in town in November to share your ideas and issues. That's one thing. And then we haven't designed phase 2 yet, but my experience, and I think this comports with Clarion's experience, is that it's certainly not going to take a year to write a new code, to actually do the writing, because one, there's a lot of information for the community to digest, and for staff to digest as well, because we are going to be dealing with procedural kinds of things, and a lot of those play into the role of the various, Jane had up there, all the various boards and elected officials and all that, how they fit into the process. But along the way, within that 2-year process, we are going to have as robust a public engagement strategy as we have in this initial phase. So there will be an opportunity for you to participate. We invited, we had a meeting with the village board members. That was, I'm trying to remember, Tuesday night.
Monday
Monday
okay.
night.
I'm fuzzy on all the meetings that I've attended. And
Village board members?
Yeah, the village board members. We had pretty good turnout. I'd say, 10, 15 people, something like that.
Yeah, can I
We
can
don't
I ask
recall
a
being
question?
invited.
I
Let me just finish.
I don't think we know.
I just want to be clear that I appreciate the invitation, and I'm not speaking about us as individuals, I'm speaking about us as all of us can go and have our individuals say, I'm talking about us as a collective body representing Columbians in some way.
If you want to invite, hopefully we can connect at our November meeting to have our consultant team here at our board meeting. You know, unfortunately,
We were invited, Andy, you and I were invited at the first round to represent CA, the first round of the small focus groups. And of course, I sit as CA's representative on the steering committee. But yeah, another meeting.
absolutely. Next time they're back in November, we will try to time it so that it coincides with your meeting. But I guess my question is, we can't do that.
Maybe we'll have a special work session. Maybe we'll have a special work session in November. We can work with that. Okay, let me get Lynn, Greg, and Sherry, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Okay.
Is the county looking at the what you want to do in the changes? We have most of our regulations were written years ago in a much more rural, more static economy. Columbia sort of plumped in the middle with this flexible zoning. What are the trends now? Things are changing so much. Our county is so different now than it was years ago, and it will be much different going forward. Are we going to be more flexible, or are we going to be more rigid? Are you going to try to adapt flexibility throughout the county regulations, somewhat similar to what Columbia is doing, or are you going to try to make some of the Columbia regulations conform more to the county? Where are we going in all this?
I hate to say this, but we don't know at this point yet. We're just in the information gathering stage, but I can tell you that in jurisdictions where I've worked, the perfect example. So I was working in Bluffton, South Carolina, which is across the coastal waterway from Hilton Head. I can't remember exactly how many PUDs they had. Instead of FDPs, they had a slug of PUDs. And Bluffton had grown from, I think, maybe a half a mile square to, I don't know, maybe my numbers are off, to 36 square miles, something like that. And it was all done as PUDs. And so we were called in a similar fashion, sort all these PUDs out, because as staff, there is no way that we can manage 150, whatever it was, 200 PUDs, and keep straight in our minds what's permitted in this one, what are the landscape standards in this one. And so from an administrative standpoint, what we're trying, the trend is to try to simplify things. The other one is to engage the public, but for projects that are more, what I'll say, mechanical in nature, here are the landscape standards. Here are the site design standards. The property is already zoned. Those kinds of projects typically are no longer going to the planning board. They can be addressed administratively at a staff level. If the project meets all of the standards in the zoning regulations, the criteria and the standards of review, they should be approved. There's no reason to take it back out to the public. So that's another trend. Codes are also getting more sensitive to the fit of infill development. Like it or not, we're no longer a greenfield county, and folks wonder, the development community wonders why it takes so long to get through the process. It's because you have a public process, the public is engaged, and developers attempt to work with communities to try to work things out before it gets either to staff or to the planning board. And so that means that there's much greater attention focused on what is the fit of a project within the context of its surrounding uses. So those are some examples. So one of the other kinds of zoning districts is a departure from the straight Euclidean kinds of zones, which is here the specific land use districts and uses are not mixed, they're very segregated. A shift towards what are called form-based or character-based codes. And I think Howard County has a perfect location for one of those, which is Ellicott City, because the development pattern is set. What you don't want is to have a new development come in that has absolutely no resemblance to what the context is. And so those codes, you can write them very simply. My preference is actually to write a simple code as opposed to a complicated one. Or it can be very complex. And those kinds of codes basically get into minimum and maximum heights. They get into where the front door of the building has to be located, whether or not it can open out onto the sidewalk, if it has to be recessed, what is the percent of glass on the main floor, what is the percent of glass on the upper floors, the orientation of roof lines. So I mean, you can start to get into kind of very character-driven codes. But a word of caution, they only work well in certain locations where you have a very set and established character of architecture. They're not architectural style codes, they're architectural character codes.
We'll do Greg and Sherry, and then we have to end the discussion.
Yeah, generally, can't stand when people quote Mr. Rouse.
I'm sorry?
I generally don't like when people quote Mr. Rouse, but I'm going to do it. From the Washington Post magazine a couple of weeks ago, something he complained about was bits and pieces of a city splattered across the landscape. Bits and pieces of a city splattered across the landscape. That's the feeling I have when I drive up Snowden River. That's the feeling I have when I drive on 108 over toward Clarksville, where just things are thrown, sort of strewn here and there with no plan. And so, you know, we're looking at our principles that Jane handed out. You know, I think what a lot of us would like would be some kind of a plan for these corridors that still have no plans attached to them. What is the because I feel like we can disagree. I know people are going to jump on me, but I feel like the plan for downtown really has done what it was designed to do. And you can disagree, you don't like this little bit or that little bit, but generally at least we know what's going to happen. It's an urban core. It seems to be functioning pretty well as an urban core. You know, we need some kind of a plan for that corridor. Number one, and number two, an understanding and an acceptance that our village centers and the importance of our village centers as vital neighborhood gathering centers, and this idea of residential areas with this village center hub, that's something unique and different. But it just right now, again, when I see things just popping up, whether it's the Grotto Pizza little strip shopping centers, let's throw a couple strips there. Let's throw a big Royal Farms thing there. Let's throw a I don't want to relitigate Wegmans, but you know, it's like, what is this is not done with any kind of vision, especially in Columbia when we're talking about walkability, bikeability, sustainability. I just don't see any of those values reflected in a lot of what's going on outside of the downtown development. I just don't. So.
Sherry, last one, and then we'll.
Yeah, thank you. I also wanted to talk to the sustainability issue because I think the way Columbia was originally built with this circular kind of process, linked circular center, speaks to a kind of wholeness. And I feel that over the last couple of years that sort of is being dissipated by development over here, development over there, and it's the pulling out rather than the original holistic design of clusters. So I still have a belief in that. And I think what I see in terms of our village centers is that when they are functioning well, people do operate in concentric circles around their village centers. There are some things they always do in their village centers. Then there are a couple of things that they do at some other village centers. And then there are some things that they do downtown. So I think that kind of holistic vision has to be kept because that is also the basis for sustainability and all of our efforts to use our energy and our land wisely. The other thing that I just wanted to mention, I was up in Canada, I was up in Manitoba, and I got this message about this meeting coming up, and I said, gee, I didn't know anything about this. I'm just going to be coming back. Did I miss something? I didn't know about the survey, and I didn't know if there were other villages that had gotten this information. So I quick got in touch with people on my village board. And you know that at our meeting on Monday night, 6 members of my village board were there. That speaks to the interest, to the level of intense caring that is based in our villages. So if there is information that has not gone out to all of the village board members, I remember that we used to have an all-hands meeting of all the members of the village boards. We used to get together, especially if there were some really important topics coming out. That might be something to think about as far as this presentation is concerned, or even before. But let's make sure that all of our village board members at least know about this process, because when you're talking about standards and criteria, that's going to be really critical to maintaining the character of all of our villages. So I think it's really that's I'd like to just throw that out as an idea.
Okay, so I'm going to end debate because, as I said, we're going to be talking about this a long time. But Jane is going to send out the list of issues for all of you to look at. And remember, I asked, please, if you can see other issues, add them to them so we have them so we can track them. And also consider what you think is the characteristics. And we've heard some good ideas about what is it that really is good about Columbia that you like, and then also things that you basically think violate the plan, and do that. And I want to thank Val and Amy for taking their time, because I know they have been, this is the third time I've seen them this week, as I've been to the Monday meeting, the Tuesday meeting.
You got to stop stalking them.
It's been 3 weeks of this, because we had Ellicott City last week, and then County Council the previous week, so.
But thank you very much, and Jane and Scott, thank you.
Scott can take notes on the issues that you raised here at the table, so if you already have raised it, you don't have to raise, but you don't have to raise it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
How about those issues?
Can we do Jane's presentation?
Well, if you send it out, then we'll make either you or Scott as the central collecting point.
Hey, Amy, can she send the slideshow out to us?
Sure, and can you send the slideshow out?
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on now to the plan for young adults. Milton, I'll turn it over to you.
I'll just take one.
Nancy?
It's just it's about a page and a half. It's coming around. If you take a few minutes to take a look at it, my fault, last minute, but
Yeah, that's right. You're laughing.
that's me. when you're ready, just let me know.
So remind the board that this was one of the objectives we put in the president's in one of our objectives. We asked him to give us the plan by July here, and so discussion.
Well, as I said in here, I'm not really calling it a plan because it would be injustice to call it a plan. I'm calling it more outline because I'm the only person right now working on this, but that's going to end soon. But it's one of those things, and Greg, I'll focus on you because you're the person that really. I understand what you're trying to accomplish, but this is a heavy lift.
I understand, and actually, I'm very happy that these.
Well, one of the things I want to keep in mind, I pulled a lot of this from in talking to Jane and Michelle, and Andy gave me some insights because the report done for the comprehensive plan done for the seniors or older adults was back in May of 2014, and I was told that was a long process, and I can appreciate trying to do this because you read all the articles out there about with the 50th about all the things that are trying to be done to bring the millennials or younger groups to the community. To me, that's a different entity. That's a development. What I'm looking at here, and one of the things I'm asking, because originally we said the focus would be on our sport and fitness programs, but that will be a part of it. Speaking for myself, I think that what I've seen in over 3 years here, I would like to make sure that we need to almost like most organizations have a succession planning. Here, I see that we need to start looking at this community for the next generation of leadership, whether it's at the CA level, it's at our advisory committees, or at the village boards. And so the community engagement part also is just as important as getting them into the doors of our fitness clubs and involved in our programs. And that's why I'm asking just to modify the language to look at a bigger picture. But as I said, I need to pull some staff together. There's individuals I would like to work with on the outside based on what I saw from the senior advisory, and plus, I'm not even going to talk about that because I've been starting doing some reading, and one of the things I find about, as I stated in here, this group, they like to do their own thing. They don't like to feel that someone is giving them timelines and this is what you have to do. So it's going to be a process. I need some directions when you want me to come back. We're just trying to put some dates to these 9 different steps.
So let me give Greg the first opportunity because he was the one who kind of raised this 2 years ago.
No, as I was saying just a minute ago, I think this outline on the second page looks very reasonable, and I know this is a heavy lift, and to me it's important, and we need to take the necessary time. But the first step is huge. Getting the right group of people together, gathering and then doing all these things is fine. I obviously, for me personally, I'd like to see a plan with dates sooner rather than later. I guess I'll just ask you. Once you said right now it's just you, it's going to change shortly.
Well, yeah,
bringing some other people in. How long do you think you would need to just put some dates? And again, they don't really need to be dates as far as by February 12th this will happen, but just generally, how is this going to work?
If you ask me my preferred preference, and as I said, I'm learning this because I have no kids. I have nieces and nephews who are millennials, and I deal with them.
Tolerate them.
That's scary. I deal with them.
So basically what I want to do is that I want to be involved in this. I'm not going to say whether I'm going to be leading it or not, but I want to be involved in the process because I want to see what comes out of it. But at my age group, I'm not in this age group. And so I want to get people involved in this process that are more representative of this age group. Because I know from my interactions with my nieces and nephews, they think differently. They don't like to be told what you should expect of them. They like to have. I was reading one article today about this where it says it's hard to believe, but the individuals in this age group are more civic involved than seniors are baby boomers. We don't see that in this community, but I'm being told that it's out there. And so we have to find a way in this community to get those individuals in this age group more involved in this community.
Alan?
And I don't know, I have to reach out to them to find out what it's going to take to get them there.
Alan and then Ginny and Nancy.
That's why I guess I'm gaining a little more understanding of your suggestion. I would flip it around, though, your suggested wording change here. I would flip it around. It's not about increasing participation in CA sport and fitness programs and activities. It's about creating programs and activities that they will participate in. It's not about increasing their participation in our existing programs and
Okay,
activities
so creating programs that they will participate in.
that speak to their needs, or whatever the wording would be. But it's that I get that if I'm understanding you correctly, I think is what you mean, not just increasing getting more people into Supreme, into our existing. Otherwise, I'm in agreement with Greg. I think this is great. Just would love to see the next, the comprehensive sketch plan of this, which the broad dates, and then a sense of when we might see something, and so on.
Yeah, I have two concerns. One, so you've eliminated, Alan, the sports and fitness, because that limited for me as well. Is that what you're saying? It should be.
I'm saying activities gives us a broader.
Right.
But activities in both statements. I just wasn't clear what the difference between a focus on and increased participation. And increased participation actually sounded narrower, and I heard you wanted to be broader.
Yeah.
And it's about figuring out what kinds of programs and activities would speak to this.
No, what I was trying to say is that the original, what the board approved, the language was with a focus on. What I'm saying is that I still want us to work, that be one of the areas we're looking at, but I want the community engagement being just a significant part, not just our sport and fitness programs and activities.
You didn't include community engagement in your suggested.
Well, what I've said at the bottom, all I'm saying is just keep the same wording where it said provide a plan and schedule for producing a report with recommendations of increasing the opportunities for young adults to become more engaged in the Columbia community, including increased participation in CA sport and fitness program and activities. All I'm saying is that I don't want to take that out, but I want to make sure that what we're doing is that if your interest is not in the sport and fitness program, it's community, it's a village board or whatever, advisory committee.
He wants to
So
take
leadership opportunities for them,
Leadership
internships, et cetera. In other words, how they can learn to become a leader in the community through internships or mentoring programs. No,
just engagement.
That's part.
Just engagement.
Okay, all right. Well, the number one here, I can understand on the second page, number one, create a task force of individuals from the Columbia community. I can understand why you want the individuals from the Columbia community representing this 17 to 30 group, but I'm not sure you want to limit the other people on the committee to Columbia, because you may have some expertise in the county, in the state, wherever, that you want to serve on this committee, and they're not from Columbia. They're not the 17 to 13 maybe, but they have tremendous expertise in working with this population.
Well, that's what I can see is because one of the things, that can be an outside resource.
Okay.
But the focus, this is a Columbia board initiative, and that's why I was looking at. And when I'm saying, I'm talking about not just residents. I'm talking about there's a lot of individuals in this age group that work on properties in Columbia.
Yeah, okay.
And so those are opportunities for us also.
So they don't have to live here.
No, they don't have to live here.
Okay, all right.
Okay, Nancy. I've got you.
In the past, CA used to have, not since you've been here, certainly it's been years, since they used to have at least annually, and sometimes in like 12 years ago, they had several times a year. And I'm talking about existing board members, village board members, and CA board members, programs to teach people how to be board members, what the role is. And there was a wonderful program at Turf Valley, and I've asked Kristen Schulder because she was there with me, and it must be at least 6 years ago. they did this fabulous program where a gentleman, I think from Georgia or Florida, came up and did a fabulous program teaching us about how to be board members. Whether we extend that or do, I mean, I think that we need something like that currently to educate people for the future leadership of this community, whether it's the millennials or not. I see that we're talking about just millennials, but having some kind of program tying it into that might spark their interest too about taking over leadership roles, hiring consultants, bringing them in and letting them do programs on a Saturday or a Sunday or both.
That could be, not saying what it is, that could be a recommendation coming out of the group.
Right. That's a good.
Lynn, and then Jen.
Yeah, I think I'm sort of bouncing back to where we were before. Yeah, I think it sounds really good. It seems like a lot of us are looking at enlarging the focus out of just the CA programs. I think we need to include programs and activities, but I also think we need to think about places, and they may not even be CA places, but again, other places for people to be, for them to be creative, for them to just hang. I think that's so much of what we're missing here.
When you say just hang, because if you remember, this is part of my collection. There's an article in the Business Journal about all these establishments, because some of the complaints we get that there's no place for millennials, there's no nightlife in here.
Right.
But with the redevelopment in the downtown area, with the density and then other places, there's going to be more of opportunities. It's just that how do we get those individuals become a part, get engaged in the community?
Well, for instance, when we had the Adirondack chairs in the park a couple weeks ago, a lot of people who don't normally show up showed up there, and they didn't know much about where anything was. And a kid walked over to the chrysalis and he said, "Wow, could I just could my friends and I just come here and jam? Can we just show up?" Yeah, this is a place for you. This is something you can do, and there are other places that people can just be. And I think that's so much what they're missing. I don't know about your kids, but my kids used to, they would look for all kinds of creative places to be. They would explore Clary's Forest woods. They would, God knows what. But, again, I think it's this whole idea about using the whole community as a resource rather than just our facilities.
Well, yes, and that's what I'm talking about. We're the facilities, getting them in our programs and activities, one, but the community is just a significant, for me, it's just a significant part. Mm-hmm. Developing that cohort of individuals that will want to be involved in the Columbia community.
Yes. Janet.
I wanted to echo, I like the community idea, and I like the looking at resources outside of Columbia idea. I think because both of those could lend itself. The one thing I wanted to mention, I couldn't remember when we talked about this before, but I guess I'm not entirely clear why it's CA's sport and fitness programs and activities and not just CA's programs and activities, because there's a lot more to CA than just sports and fitness. And I hesitate to focus on that aspect because it would potentially alienate people who might not be interested in sports and fitness, but might be interested in multicultural or the arts or some of the other programs. I realize that that's a big focus of CA, but I'm hesitant to specify it in that way. I think it's a little bit limiting.
Remember, that's the board's language.
That's what I'm asking, because I didn't remember it specifically saying
approved.
sports and fitness. When I see that in print now,
the language
I'd like to
we
revisit our
approved.
language then, I think.
Well, if I may.
I've been interpreting activities as the other things we do.
It's limiting, is what
programs.
what Jan. I think she's right. I think it is limiting.
We can work on that, Milton. Milton's proposed some new language. Anything else?
Do you want a deadline for this first one? Like
No.
What I was going to say is
like a couple of months.
is we will ask
A couple of months.
Milton, we will ask
January.
Milton for an update in September.
What I like,
Okay,
my
that's
preference
what we'll
would do, if I can just start trying to put together a committee
okay.
and let them try to put some put together a task force and let them try to put timelines on it.
No, I was thinking, were you asking us to give you a timeline for just number one so that by January you have a task force?
I think what we do is we
I don't
just
care.
get status
Sure,
updates.
it's fine. I
right?
thought you were asking for a timeline.
I mean, that way we just kind of keep an eye on how things are going.
Sure, that
And
sounds
if there's we see a difficulty, we can.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, anything else? Thank you, Milton. I think the board's happy. Wow.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Okay. Now, we'll invite Dennis up and John, and thank you for staying to the late hour.
Well, appreciate you taking this on at a late hour. So the CA staff recently received requests regarding whether or not we would be willing to participate in a SHA State Highway Administration grant program. Our participation would be limited to providing land for stream restoration, and we would provide an easement in perpetuity. So the state would come in, they would pay someone for permitting, for drawings, for constructions, and for maintenance in perpetuity. And this is potentially worth, it's not just hundreds of thousands of dollars, it's millions of dollars if you look at the long-term impacts. And it's not very different. So we recently, the board, approved an easement request by Howard County for a little piece of stream restoration at Woodlock. And this is similar to that, except on a much broader scale, much larger scale. And it was out of, it doesn't fit the board's timeline, I recognize that, in terms of the process, but it was such a great opportunity and so much money was involved, I wanted to bring it forward. Basically, I'm asking the board to approve easements in the future and allow staff to send a letter along with the grant application that the easements would be granted if those areas were selected by SHA for improvement. And so the easement would provide for construction access, and long-term maintenance access and maintenance responsibilities.
I suggest you mention the two areas. I think
John can talk. So the areas in general. So, and if you've walked around Lake Kit, it's called the Wild Lake Tributary, and it comes down from LPP to Lake Kit. It is the most deeply incised. It is almost Grand Canyon-esque in terms of it. If you haven't seen it and walk around there, that thing has gotten so wide. That's one of the areas that they're talking about. That's part of this grant application program. They might include the area from LPP to the Wild Lake Dam. It's a little bit fluid in terms of length. There's also a piece in Oakland Mills that runs from.
Well, you extend from the head of Wild Lake up to Hesperus, and there are two branches. One would go over to where we've done stream restoration below Harper's Farm and connect to that, and one goes all the way up to Elliott's Oak. So they would add that, so it's about a mile and a half. And then the second location is over in Patriot Pond, the stream below that runs from Thunder Hill Road to Lightning View. And when I walked out on Tuesday with them, they were making inquiries about perhaps expanding that.
I just wanted to make sure that the board understood the areas we were considering, just so when we do an
Were these things that the state identified or things that we've identified to the
They
state?
brought them to us.
Is this going to require county permission or anything?
No, it's all private property. It goes through the county permitting and state permitting process, but it's all private land.
Chow, you're here.
So I have a question. How much money actually needed for that work?
So how much money does CA need?
No, yeah, if we see I want to do that alone.
So we don't need any money to.
No, I mean, if we don't get that money, we
What
would
So what would it cost us? It would cost us, well, without design, it's hard to say, but it's in the, so that Wild Lake Tributary that I was talking about, it's got to be $500,000.
Oh, then get the money, right?
Places, you guys.
Janet?
So, in looking at the plans, it looks like some of these run kind of close to residential. Is that a concern at all?
It's always a concern, and there has to be a notification process, but they have to meet all the county standards and our standards, and we could we could make that part of the agreement.
And in terms of So I know there's, sometimes a lot of land movement. I was just curious in terms of tree cover, if that's part of, if that comes out and is replanted, or if that is something, do they generally try to preserve the mature trees, or?
Well, we have nice riparian forest, and that is a starting point with them. We don't like trees getting cut.
Right.
But we also have a lot of ash trees in our riparian areas, and the emerald ash bore's killing them. So you could go into, particularly if you go above Wild Lake, there are sections where we have groves of dead and dying trees. Those removals actually may save us a fair amount of work in the future, and there would be replanting, yes.
I'm just concerned, like, so for residential areas that currently have a good bit of tree cover, if they lose it, that could impact them.
But one of the things that's been kind of interesting, the two fellows that I'm working with, one from each firm, are Columbia residents, long-term residents. They actually have a pretty good feel for how we associate with our forests, with our pathways, and they all live next to streams, both of them. So, yeah, they're sensitive to that.
Okay. Let me let Lynn go in first, then I'll come back to Alan. Lynn?
I walk these streams around Wild Lake all the time, and they are a mess, and it would be wonderful. I mean, there are trees that fall down daily almost. It would be, this sounds like a very exciting project. I can't imagine we wouldn't really want to do it.
Alan, and then Ginny.
I certainly, I'm with Chow, I'm certainly leaning, it sounds great, but in terms of due diligence and under there ain't no such thing as a free lunch, what are we giving up?
So we give up the right to develop those areas. So if you agree to an easement in perpetuity, it has to stay, of course, it's going to stay a stream, but you can't make it an active recreational area, which the areas that we're talking about don't lend themselves to that use. But you do give up any rights to develop those areas.
Can we put pathways?
Oh, yeah, pathways are okay.
Ginny?
Yeah, I like the Lightning View Thunder Hill one. I don't know why I picked that one.
Big picture.
Yeah, no, I'm just curious because we talk about Wild Lake. That was, but I mean, this you would never get to this, or it would cost CA a fortune to get to it. I guess.
I think we have to get to it eventually.
But I mean, it would cost.
Be probably when I'm standing here.
Yeah, you'd be retired and long gone. So this is an opportunity. I'm surprised the state has the money to do this, but I'm really glad. Is it federal funding or something?
Well, it's state funding. This
State
is all coming
funding?
out of the state highway.
And
State highway has a permit requirement that's been imposed on them, and they really, through this RFP, want to address about 20 miles of stream. So I'm figuring they've got $30–40 million.
We'll just want a little bit of it, okay. But the objective here, from the state's point of view, is to help clean up the Chesapeake Bay, or what?
Well,
or
it's
prevent
specifically to
erosion?
meet a permit requirement that they treat impervious surface. State highways, which owns all the big roads, and runoff from those roads has created significant problems statewide. They have a permit to address that, and they've come to the conclusion that they don't own enough ground immediately adjacent to all other highways to do that. So the permit holders, the other state agencies, have given them permission to go off-site, and they're getting so many acres of impervious surface per 1,000 feet of stream they fix.
I mean, it seems like a great deal, and I'm really glad you guys are paying attention to this. Well, somebody
there's a
deserves
secondary
credit.
benefit to it.
Milton?
If you think about Wild Lake,
Yeah.
all that sediment coming down that stream is what we will be dredging out this
Right.
fall.
Right.
So anything we can do to stabilize that stream, or get someone else to do to stabilize that stream, will save us money in the long run.
Fantastic.
Let's see. Any other questions here before I give to Alan?
So that just raises a question, do we get any say in what's done and how it's done? Or we just sort of turn it over to them and they just go do whatever they think is
No, we'll be reviewing the design. I mean, one of the things that I generally, when we work with the county, like at Woodlot, we looked at that design. We were particularly interested in the maintenance aspect, but on this one, where the state's going to assume maintenance in perpetuity, that portion of it is going to be their issue, and we'll be looking at aesthetics. We'll be looking at trees, tree removal, tree replacement, planting plans, things like that.
And is this, if we approve this, is this basically a done deal, or are we competing with other people in the
We're
state?
competing. This is competitive. So the letter of intent goes in with the application. I actually think cost-wise, we're on probably the high side. Folks who want to do this out in ag land are going to come in cheaper. And, you know, we're going to hope that they actually do some of this evaluation based on actual need rather than just on cost.
So
Not a delegation or anything?
So remember, we are competing. If we do not win, you know, the easements disappear. I mean, they're not going to go through. But we just figured that this was an opportunity that was too good to pass up, and we wanted to make sure the board was aware of it and let you guys decide whether or not we should pursue it.
Fantastic.
Chow?
I make a motion to approve this.
Sure. You can make a motion. So Chow moved that we do grant the easements based on all the discussions we've had for those areas we mentioned tonight, because we got to be specific. And Alan seconded. Is that right?
And we're basically authorizing staff to pursue this.
Yes. All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
I have one more
sure.
question, I'm
All
sorry. In terms of the maintenance agreement, did they outline what that entails?
There actually won't be a maintenance agreement between us.
Well, I mean, they're
There'll be
on the
an
hook
easement.
for maintaining it.
What does that mean?
Which is, like, do they ever come back is my question.
Yes, they actually would have to by permit for a period, and then they'll own the easement. And actually, I think the way that will work is when we see something going on, we will be calling them up.
I see.
Is there a timeline where we will know whether we're won or not?
Well, I'm thinking, okay, so that's state highways. They are not as flexible an organization as perhaps we are. So proposals are due August 31st. I'm thinking it may take them 2 months to make decisions before they announce any sort of award.
So there's a possibility we know something by the end of the calendar year?
There's a possibility, yes.
Yeah. So we'll just come back, we'll keep the board informed and let you know the status of it.
Would it do any good to make our senators aware of this?
They said lean on our delegation.
Our delegation, our Senator Casemeyer and Senator Gazon. It's a subtle question. Would it do any good that we're applying? Well, never mind. Let's skip that question.
Yeah, I think that we probably should not use that angle. I think that the project ought to stand on its own and be competitive.
Okay.
I think if someone goes in and adds some pressure to it,
Yeah, okay.
they might kick them out.
Okay.
All right. Any further discussion? If not, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the motion? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for sticking around.
Great.
Okay, we're on now to the tracking forms for board request. Any questions?
I have a request. I want to add that form. I have a request to add that form. Should I do it now or?
Either that or mail it to Janet.
Okay.
I mean, either, you know, if you want. It's probably better to actually mail it to Janet because then she gets the actual wording.
Sure.
Yeah, that's.
Did you,
Yep.
I think it was a suggestion from this Janet about adding a column to the
Yeah. well, that's
tracking
right.
form that we could sort of click on the resolution document. I think that's a good
Oh,
idea as well.
okay. I haven't seen that yet.
I
So.
think it's.
Send it like
It was
an
an
hour before the
email.
I think it's a great. I think it's a great
I know,
idea.
I sent it over.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, let me look at it and,
Yeah.
and
It
see.
should be doable.
Uh-huh.
I mean, we're still playing with it. So,
Yeah, no, it's a great idea.
anything else?
Don't ask again.
President, tracking form. Any questions? If not, we're going to go to talking points and see.
The board approves the charge reports to its advisory committees and added the charge that the Arts Center Advisory Committee
Consider the feasibility and placement of one or more pieces of permanent public art on CA land. By consent, the board approves the annual charge rate and cap for the FY 2019 and conditional 2020 budgets. The board heard an overview of the history of Newtown zoning and the process now underway to assess and revise development regulations. The board reviewed an outline of potential steps to produce recommendations for increasing young adults' engagement in Columbia, including CA sports and fitness programs and activities. The board authorized CA staff to issue letters of intent for easements associated with the State Highway Administration Steam Restoration Program.
Sounds good. Any changes? Thank you, Valerie. All right, well, hearing no objection, I want to thank everybody for staying around. We're going to end the meeting. And,